The day becomes good when the heart becomes good. A person may search their whole life for the perfect hour and still overlook the sacred power hidden in one honest moment. Imagine someone standing at the doorway of a great decision. Perhaps it is the morning before a wedding, when the house is full of flowers, voices, footsteps, and nervous laughter. Perhaps it is the day a family prepares to move into a new home. The walls freshly painted, the altar carefully arranged, the children running from room to room with excitement. Or perhaps it is the beginning of a business, a long journey, a new job, a new chapter of life where everything feels possible, and yet everything feels uncertain. Around this person, many voices rise with sincere concern. Choose the right date, avoid the wrong hour, ask the fortune teller, arrange the door this way, face the bed that way. Do not begin when the stars are unfavorable. Do not ignore the hidden forces that may shape your future. And in the middle of all these voices, beneath the hope, beneath the fear, one quiet question begins to form in the heart. Did the Buddha ever teach us to depend on these things, or did he point to a deeper law? This question is not merely philosophical. It is not something distant, reserved for monks in ancient monasteries or scholars, reading old texts under dim light. It touches ordinary human life. It appears at the dining table when parents worry about their children's future. It appears in the mind of a young couple who wants their marriage to begin under a good sign. It appears in the heart of someone opening a small shop, borrowing money, taking a risk, hoping that this one decision may change the destiny of the whole family. It appears when people are afraid to fail, afraid to lose, afraid to make a mistake that cannot be undone. And because life is uncertain, the human heart naturally searches for certainty. We want to know what cannot be known. We want a sign before we step forward. We want someone to tell us, this day is safe, this direction is blessed, this hour will bring success, this path will not lead to sorrow. There is something deeply human in that longing. It is not foolish to want safety. It is not wrong to love our families and wish to protect them from suffering. When people consult fortune tellers, when they ask about auspicious days, when they rearrange their homes according to ideas of harmony and energy, often they are not acting from greed alone. Many times they are acting from love, anxiety, hope, memory, and fear. A mother may ask for a lucky wedding date because she wants her child's marriage to be peaceful. A father may consult someone before opening a business because he has seen hardship and does not want his family to fall into debt. An elderly person may insist on certain customs because in their heart, these customs are tied to care, continuity, and the wish that the next generation will be safe. Behind many rituals and beliefs, there is a trembling human tenderness. May nothing bad happen. May those I love be protected. May this life, already so fragile, be held by something greater than my own uncertainty. Consider a young student on the night before a decisive examination. She has studied for months, filled notebooks with careful notes, and stayed awake many nights reviewing what she has learned. Yet as the hour approaches, she still feels the pull to search for a lucky pen, a favorable seat, a fortunate direction to face while she writes. A friend tells her to avoid washing her hair that morning because it is said to wash away good fortune. Another tells her which color to wear because certain colors are said to invite success. She listens, half amused and half anxious, because somewhere inside her, a small voice whispers that perhaps one overlooked sign could tip the outcome. What she does not always notice is that her real protection was built long before this night. In the quiet discipline of every evening, she chose to study instead of rest. In every difficult problem, she chose to understand rather than skip. In every moment, she resisted the temptation to give up. The pen in her hand did not create her knowledge. The seat she sits in did not write her answers. Her own effort, repeated patiently over time, was already the true preparation. This is the same truth hidden inside the wish for a lucky day. The comfort of an outer sign can feel real, but it is the inner cause, built through sustained and honest effort, that actually decides the outcome. So if we approach this question harshly, we miss the heart of it. The Buddha's teaching was never an invitation to arrogance. It was never meant to make a person look down on others and say, "You are superstitious. I am wise." That attitude itself would be far from the Dharma. The true spirit of the Buddha's path begins with compassion, with careful seeing, with the willingness to understand why people cling before we speak about letting go. Yet compassion does not mean confusion. Kindness does not require us to blur the truth. The Buddha's teaching, especially as preserved in the Pali Canon and the early Buddhist tradition, asks us to look directly at the roots of suffering. It asks us not only what comforts the mind for a moment, but what actually frees the mind from fear. It asks us not only what people believe, but what leads to the ending of greed, hatred, and delusion. And here the central question becomes very clear. Did the Buddha teach people to rely on divination, astrology, geomancy, fortune-telling, and lucky days? Or did he guide them toward another kind of security, one founded on karma, ethical responsibility, wisdom, and liberation? This question matters because the difference is profound. If happiness depends on a lucky hour, then we must live anxiously before the calendar. If success depends on hidden arrangements of space and direction, then our peace is fragile, always threatened by something outside our control. If our future is fixed by the movement of stars, the reading of palms, the shape of the face, or the prediction of another person, then our own moral effort becomes secondary. We may begin to think, why cultivate the heart if destiny has already been written? Why purify speech if the stars have already spoken? Why restrain harmful actions if fortune has already decided my path? But the Buddha's teaching moves in a very different direction. Again and again, the Dhamma brings the human being back to intention, back to action, back to the living present. What we think, what we say, what we do, what we repeatedly cultivate in the heart, these are not small things. They are the seeds of future experience. They shape the character. They influence the world around us. They build habits, relationships, consequences, and inner worlds. In the language of the Buddha's teaching, this is karma, intentional action of body, speech, and mind. Karma is not fatalism. It is not a cold sentence imposed from outside. It is not the idea that everything happening now was mechanically caused by something done before, leaving no room for effort, understanding, or transformation. Rather, karma points to responsibility. It says that our choices matter. It says that even in a conditioned world, the heart can be trained. A bitter word can be withheld, a generous act can be offered. A harmful intention can be recognized before it becomes action. A moment of anger can become a moment of mindfulness. A life moving in confusion can turn gradually toward wisdom. This is why the Buddha's path is so empowering. It does not place the human being helplessly under the rule of omens. It does not say that a person must wait for the universe to grant permission before living rightly. It does not teach that goodness becomes powerful only when performed at a lucky hour. Instead, it points to something both simple and demanding. If you want a better future, begin by purifying the causes you are creating now. A day becomes meaningful, not because someone has named it fortunate, but because within that day, a person refrains from harming. A house becomes peaceful, not only because its door faces a certain direction, but because those who live inside speak truthfully, forgive one another, practice generosity, and do not turn the home into a battlefield of ego. A marriage becomes blessed, not merely because the wedding was held under a favorable sign, but because two people learn patience, loyalty, kindness, restraint, and understanding. A business becomes worthy not simply because it began at an auspicious hour, but because it is conducted with honesty, fairness, and respect for the lives of others. This does not mean that beauty, tradition, and cultural forms have no place. Human beings need symbols. Families need ceremonies. Communities need ways to express reverence, gratitude, and hope. A wedding date chosen with care can bring families together. A clean and harmonious home can support calmness. A ritual performed with sincerity can remind people to be humble and grateful. The issue is not whether culture exists. The issue is whether we mistake outer signs for inner liberation. The issue is whether we place our trust in arrangements and predictions, while neglecting the purification of conduct and mind. There is a subtle danger here, and it is easy to miss. A person may feel temporary comfort after hearing a favorable prediction. They may feel relieved when told that a date is lucky, that the house is aligned, that fortune will improve, that comfort is real, but it may not be deep. If the heart remains full of craving, anger, envy, dishonesty, and heedlessness, then the roots of suffering are still alive. The mind may rest for a few days, but fear will return. Another uncertainty will appear. Another decision will arise. Another sign will be needed. And slowly, without noticing, a person may become dependent, always looking outside, always waiting for confirmation, always afraid to move without being told that the unseen forces approve. The Buddha's path invites the opposite movement. It invites us to come home to direct knowing. It asks us to look at suffering and its causes. It asks us to observe the mind when fear arises, when craving reaches outward, when doubt searches desperately for guarantees. Instead of immediately running to someone who claims to know the future, the practitioner pauses and asks, what is happening in my heart right now? Is this fear? Is this attachment? Is this love mixed with anxiety? Is this the wish to control what cannot be controlled? That pause is already powerful. In that pause, we begin to reclaim responsibility. The person standing at the doorway of a wedding, a journey, a new home, or a new beginning does not need to condemn the voices around them. They can listen with respect. They can understand that relatives speak from care, that elders speak from tradition, that friends speak from their own beliefs. But deep within, if they are guided by the Buddha's teaching, they also remember, no external sign can replace wholesome action. No chosen hour can purify an unwholesome intention. No arrangement of objects can protect a mind that keeps creating the causes of suffering. And no prediction, however comforting, can do the work of mindfulness, virtue, and wisdom. This is where the Dharma becomes both gentle and unshakable. It does not strip life of mystery, but it refuses to let mystery become bondage. It does not deny that conditions affect us, but it teaches that the most important condition we can cultivate is the quality of the heart. It does not promise that good people will never face difficulty, or that ethical living will prevent all loss, sickness, disappointment, or death. The Buddha was far too honest for such promises, but he taught that a mind trained in goodness, clarity, and wisdom meets life differently. Such a mind does not collapse as easily. It does not create unnecessary suffering on top of unavoidable pain. It becomes a refuge. And perhaps this is the deeper meaning of a good day. A good day is not one in which nothing unpleasant happens. A good day is one in which we do not abandon the path. It is a day when we choose not to lie, even when lying would be convenient. It is a day when we give, even a little, instead of closing the fist. It is a day when we notice anger before it becomes cruelty. It is a day when we remember impermanence and soften our pride. It is a day when we return again and again to what is wholesome. In this light, the question changes. Instead of asking, which day is lucky enough for me to begin? We may ask, what kind of intention am I bringing into this beginning? Instead of asking, will this hour guarantee success? We may ask, are my actions aligned with truth, kindness, and wisdom? Instead of asking, what does fate hold for me? We may ask, what seeds am I planting now through my body, speech, and mind? This shift is not small. It is the difference between fear and freedom. It is the difference between living as someone carried helplessly by signs and living as someone awake to causes and consequences. It is the difference between trying to secure life from the outside and learning to purify life from within. So when we explore whether the Buddha taught fortune-telling, feng shui, astrology, or dependence on auspicious days and unlucky hours, we are not attacking anyone's family, culture, or personal history. We are not here to mock the trembling heart that longs for safety. We are here to return, compassionately and clearly, to the Buddha's own direction. We are here to ask what truly reduces suffering. We are here to ask what leads beyond greed, hatred, and delusion. We are here to ask whether real protection comes from external signs or from the steady cultivation of wholesome karma. Because in the end, the Buddha did not come into the world merely to give people better predictions. He came to show the way out of bondage. He did not teach us to become more skillful at fearing the future. He taught us to understand the causes of suffering and to abandon them. He did not place liberation in the hands of fortune-tellers, stars, directions, or calendars. He pointed back to this very mind, this very action, this very breath, this very moment where wisdom can begin. And perhaps, if we listen deeply, we may discover something both humbling and liberating. The most auspicious moment is not found by searching the sky, but by awakening the heart. The best direction is not merely east or west, north or south, but the direction away from greed, hatred, and delusion. The most blessed home is not only one arranged with beauty, but one filled with truth, compassion, restraint, and understanding. The safest future is not one promised by prediction, but one prepared by wholesome causes. To understand why the Buddha spoke so carefully about these matters, we first need to step back into the world in which he lived. To step into India in the time of the Buddha is to step into a world alive with signs. The sky was not simply sky. It was a great scroll of meaning. The movement of stars, the shape of the moon, the season of the rains, the sudden eclipse, the flight of birds across the morning light, all of these could be read, interpreted, feared, or celebrated. For many people, the universe was not silent, it was constantly speaking. The question was only whether one could find the right person to explain what it was saying. A child was born, and immediately there were questions. What marks appeared on the body? What dreams had the mother seen before giving birth? Under what star did the child enter the world? Would this child become rich, poor, powerful, wise, short-lived, fortunate, troubled? Before the infant had spoken a word, the adults around him might already be searching for patterns, omens, promises, and warnings. A family planned a marriage. And again the question arose, is the day suitable? Are the stars harmonious? Will this union bring prosperity or sorrow? A merchant prepared to begin a journey, and he might pause, not only to check his goods and animals, but to ask whether the road was favorable. A king considered a political decision, and he might look to priests, astrologers, dream interpreters, and ritual experts for guidance. A farmer wondered when to plant. A householder wondered when to begin construction. A mother worried about illness in the home. A warrior wondered whether battle would end in victory or ruin. In almost every major moment of life, people looked outward for signs. This was not unusual. It was part of the air people breathed. Ancient Indian society was rich with religious imagination. It was a land of sacrifices, mantras, sacred fires, vows, austerities, rituals of purity, and deep beliefs about unseen forces. Many believed that blessings and misfortunes could be influenced through correct ritual action. If the offering was made properly, if the chant was spoken without error, if the time was chosen well, if the direction was favorable, then perhaps success would come. If something went wrong, perhaps the cause lay in impurity, a broken vow, an angry spirit, an unlucky sign, or a neglected rite. People did not live with modern uncertainty in the same way we do, but they certainly lived with uncertainty. Disease came without warning. Crops failed. Children died young. Wealth could disappear. Travelers could be attacked. Kings could be overthrown. A woman could lose her husband. A man could lose his land. In such a world, the wish to know the future was deeply human. Behind the search for omens was often fear. Behind the consultation of astrologers was often a trembling heart asking, "Will I be safe? Will my family be protected? Will this suffering pass?" So we should not imagine these ancient people as foolish or strange. They were human beings like us. They loved, feared, hoped, grieved, and longed for control in a world where control was always fragile. When life feels uncertain, the mind naturally looks for something firm to hold. A prediction can feel like a lamp in darkness. A lucky date can feel like protection. A ritual can feel like a wall built against misfortune. Even if the peace lasts only a moment, people cling to it because fear is heavy. And in such a culture, there were many who offered answers. Some specialists claimed to understand the language of the stars. Some read bodily marks and said they could tell a person's destiny from the shape of the limbs, the lines of the hands, the features of the face, or the signs appearing on the skin. Some interpreted dreams. Some calculated favorable days and dangerous days. Some watched the calls of animals, the appearance of comets, the direction of smoke, the sound of thunder, or the movement of fire. Others performed rituals to remove danger, invite wealth, bless a marriage, protect a child, win a dispute, or secure success before a journey. These religious professionals and wandering teachers could gain great influence. If a person believed you could protect them from misfortune, they would feed you. If they believed you could reveal their future, they would honor you. If they believed your ritual could bring sons, wealth, victory, or long life, they would support you with gifts. Knowledge of the unseen could become a source of status. Prediction could become a livelihood. Fear could become an economy. And this is important to understand. The Buddha did not appear in a cultural emptiness. He did not teach among people who had never heard of omens, rituals, fate, purity, sacrifice, astrology, or cosmic influence. He lived and taught in the very midst of these beliefs. His listeners already knew the pull of such practices. They had grown up surrounded by them. They had watched families delay events because the day was not favorable. They had seen people ask whether a dream was auspicious or dangerous. They had known teachers who claimed special powers of knowledge. They had heard debates about destiny, ritual, caste, and cosmic order. So when the Buddha spoke of karma, his teaching was not merely one more idea placed among many old beliefs. It was a profound redirection. He was speaking to people who often looked outward for the cause of happiness and sorrow. He gently but firmly turned their attention inward, not in a narrow or selfish way, but in a deeply responsible way. He asked them to look at intention, to look at action, to look at speech, to look at the state of the mind. He showed that suffering does not end because someone predicts the future correctly. Suffering does not end because one has chosen a lucky hour while greed remains unexamined. Suffering does not end because a ritual has been performed while hatred still burns in the heart. Suffering does not end because one has avoided an unlucky direction while delusion continues to guide one's life. This was not a rejection of culture for the sake of being different. It was not social criticism merely for the sake of criticism. The Buddha's concern was more urgent, more compassionate, and more liberating. He saw beings aging, falling ill, dying, grieving, clinging, fearing, and being reborn into suffering again and again. He saw the mind trapped by craving and ignorance. He saw that human beings were trying to solve deep suffering with surface assurances. They were asking, "What will happen to me?" while not yet seeing, "What am I creating now?" There is a great tenderness in this shift. Imagine a person afraid of misfortune, running from one advisor to another. One says, "Do not travel on this day. Another says, make this offering. Another says, your stars are difficult. Another says, this sign is dangerous. The person may become more anxious, not less. Every sound becomes a warning. Every delay becomes a sign. Every dream becomes a message. The mind becomes dependent, restless, and afraid. Instead of growing in wisdom, it becomes tangled in interpretation. The Buddha offered another way. He did not say, be careless. He did not say, actions have no consequences. In fact, he taught the opposite. Actions matter profoundly, but the actions that matter most are not superstitious gestures performed from fear. They are intentional deeds rooted in body, speech, and mind. A kind word has consequence. A cruel word has consequence. Generosity has consequence. Violence has consequence. Restraint has consequence. Intoxication, deception, envy, compassion, mindfulness, patience, wisdom. All of these shape the life we experience and the future we move toward. In this way, the Buddha brought the search for security down from the distant stars into the living heart. This does not mean ancient people immediately abandoned their old habits. Human beings rarely change so quickly. Even today, after thousands of years, we still see the same patterns. Before a wedding, people ask for a lucky date. Before building a house, people ask for a favorable direction. Before starting a business, people ask whether the timing is good. Before making a decision, they ask for a sign. The clothing is different. The language is different. The calendars are different. But the anxiety is familiar. The heart is still asking, can I be sure? And this is why the Buddha's teaching remains so powerful. He spoke to an ancient world, but he also speaks to the modern mind. Because the mind that clings to omens is not only ancient, it is present right now. It is the mind that wants certainty before practicing goodness. It is the mind that wants guarantees before acting wisely. It is the mind that says, if the conditions are perfect, then I will begin. If the day is lucky, then I will be brave. If someone promises success, then I will move forward. But the Dharma invites us to ask something deeper. What kind of intention am I carrying into this day? What kind of speech will I offer? What kind of action will I plant? Am I nourishing fear, or am I nourishing wisdom? Am I becoming more dependent or more awake? Am I using spiritual language to escape responsibility or to return to it? In the Buddha's time, many people believed that ritual purity could protect them, but the Buddha pointed to purity of conduct. Many believed that birth determined spiritual worth. The Buddha pointed to actions. Many believed that sacrifices could please unseen powers. The Buddha pointed to harmlessness, compassion, and liberation from craving. Many sought knowledge of the future. The Buddha pointed to direct knowledge of suffering, its cause, its ending, and the path. That difference is like the difference between standing outside a burning house and asking what the smoke means, and realizing that the fire must be extinguished. The Buddha was not interested in feeding endless speculation, while the heart remained bound. He did not encourage people to become collectors of signs. He encouraged them to become knowers of experience, to know greed as greed, to know anger as anger, to know fear as fear, to know impermanence as impermanence, to know suffering as suffering, to know release as release. This is why his teaching on karma was so meaningful in that world of omens. Karma did not leave human beings helpless under fate. It did not say everything is already written in the stars. It did not say our future is fixed by birth, by dream, by bodily mark, by the day of the week, or by the arrangement of the heavens. It said, in a profound and sobering way, what you do matters. What you cultivate matters. What you abandon matters. What you repeat becomes your path. To a fearful mind, this may first sound heavy, because responsibility can feel frightening. But to a wise heart, it is liberating. If suffering has causes, those causes can be understood. If unwholesome actions lead to pain, they can be restrained. If wholesome actions lead to welfare, they can be developed. If ignorance binds, wisdom can be cultivated. If craving burns, craving can be cooled. We are not merely prisoners of signs. We are participants in the shaping of our lives. This was the quiet revolution of the Buddha's message. He stood in a world where many searched the skies, and he pointed to the mind. He lived among people who feared unlucky times, and he taught the timeless value of wholesome action. He saw people paying for predictions, and he offered a path to direct understanding. He knew that human beings wanted protection, and he taught the protection of virtue. He knew they wanted blessings, and he taught the blessing of a well-trained heart. Of course, for ordinary people, the old habits continued. A mother might still wonder whether a dream meant danger. A farmer might still watch the sky with concern. A ruler might still consult advisors before a campaign. The Buddha did not need to deny that people lived in such ways. What he did was show what truly leads beyond fear. He separated spiritual liberation from dependence on prediction. He showed that the noble life is not built upon lucky signs, but upon right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And when we see this background clearly, we begin to appreciate the courage and compassion of his teaching. It would have been easy to guide followers by promising favorable outcomes. It would have been easy to impress people with mysterious claims. It would have been easy to become another teacher selling certainty to the anxious. But the Buddha chose the harder and truer way. He did not flatter fear, he healed it. He did not decorate confusion, he cut through it. He did not make people more dependent on him, he taught them to see for themselves. Against this background, the Buddha's teaching shines with a very different kind of clarity. Not fate, but karma. Not fate, but karma. This is where the Buddha gently turns our eyes away from the sky of omens and brings them back to the field of the heart. He does not ask us first, what star was above you when you were born? He asks us, in effect, what are you doing with this mind, this speech, this body, this moment? Because in the Buddha's teaching, the most powerful force shaping our life is not a hidden arrangement of planets, not the whisper of a fortune teller, not the luck of a day written on a calendar. It is karma, but we have to understand this word carefully. Karma does not mean blind fate. It does not mean that everything happening to us was fixed long ago, and now we can only suffer helplessly. It does not mean punishment from a god. It does not mean a mysterious force that someone else can read, control, or cancel for us. Karma, in the Buddha's teaching, means intentional action. It is action born from intentions, expressed through body, speech, and mind. When we move with greed, hatred, or delusion, we are planting one kind of seed. When we move with generosity, kindness, and wisdom, we are planting another. The Buddha's teaching on karma is not meant to frighten us. It is meant to awaken us. It tells us that life is not merely happening to us from the outside. We are participating in it. Every thought we choose to feed, every word we decide to speak, every action we repeat again and again becomes part of the path beneath our feet. This is why the Buddha spoke so directly about responsibility. He taught that beings are the owners of their karma, heirs to their karma, born of their karma, related to their karma, and supported by their karma. Whatever karma they do, for good or for harm, of that they will be the heirs. These words are simple, but if we listen deeply, they can change the way we live. To be the owner of karma means that no one else can live our moral life for us. A teacher may guide us, a friend may encourage us, a family may support us, a sacred place may inspire us. But the intention in our own heart is ours to cultivate. No ritual can replace honesty. No lucky hour can replace compassion. No beautiful arrangement of a house can purify a mind that keeps producing cruelty. The Buddha places the power and the responsibility back into the hands of each person. This can feel uncomfortable at first. Many people prefer prediction because prediction seems easier than transformation. If someone tells us, this year will be fortunate, we feel relieved. If someone tells us, Avoid this date, choose that hour, move this object, face this direction. We feel that perhaps life can be managed without changing ourselves too much. But the teaching of Karma does not allow us to remain asleep in that way. It asks something more honest from us. It asks us to look at the roots of our own suffering. Fortune-telling usually begins with the question, what will happen to me? The Buddha's path begins with a different question. What am I doing now? Fortune-telling looks outward, searching for signs, warnings, and promises. The Buddha's path looks inward, observing intention, craving, anger, fear, and wisdom. Fortune-telling often makes the mind wait for an answer from someone else. The Dhamma trains the mind to see causes and conditions clearly. This does not mean the Buddha denied that life is complex. He did not teach that every single experience can be explained in a shallow or simplistic way. There are many conditions in the world: climate, society, health, family, politics, the actions of others, and old karma from the past. Life is a vast web of causes, but within that web, the Buddha points to the place where freedom begins, our present intention. We may not control everything that arrives at our door, but we can train how we meet it. We may not control every result, but we can choose what causes we plant now. Imagine a person who spends many days searching for the most auspicious date. He asks astrologers. He checks calendars. He waits for the perfect hour to open a business, to sign a contract, to begin a journey. Finally, he finds a day praised as lucky, a day said to be full of prosperity and success. The lamps are lit. The offerings are placed. The direction is chosen. Everything appears correct on the outside, but on that very day, he speaks harshly to those who work with him. He cheats a customer. He hides the truth from his partner. He acts from greed, thinking only of his own gain. He smiles when others are watching, but inside he is restless, grasping, and afraid. Tell me, what kind of seed has he planted? Can a fortunate date turn dishonesty into honesty? Can a lucky hour make cruelty harmless? Can an auspicious sign protect a heart that is burning with greed? The Buddha would ask us to look not at the date, but at the intention, because the fruit follows the seed. If the seed is bitter, we should not be surprised when the fruit is bitter. If the roots are poisoned, decorating the branches will not make the tree healthy. Now imagine another person. She does not know any special date. She has no grand ritual arrangement. She does not consult the stars before beginning her day. She wakes up quietly, remembers the precepts, and decides not to harm. She earns her living honestly. She speaks gently when she could have spoken with anger. She gives a little, even when she does not have much. She forgives someone, not because it is easy, but because she does not want hatred to rule her life. She pauses before reacting. She watches her mind. She plants small seeds of goodness again and again. Perhaps the world does not call her day lucky. Perhaps no calendar marks it as auspicious. But in the language of the Dhamma, that day is bright. That day is protected by wholesome intention. That day becomes a field of merit because she has lived it with care. The good fortune of such a person is not something hanging above her in the sky. It is being cultivated in her own heart. This is the quiet revolution of the Buddha's teaching. He does not tell us to wait until conditions are perfect before we live wisely. He does not say, only on a good day should you be kind. Only at a lucky hour should you be honest. Only when the stars are favorable should you practice generosity. No, he teaches that every moment is a doorway. Every moment allows us either to deepen suffering or to weaken it. Every moment gives us the chance to plant a different seed. Karma is intimate. It is not far away. It is present in the tone of our voice when we speak to someone weaker than us. It is present in the thoughts we repeat when no one else can hear them. It is present in the way we earn money, the way we handle desire, the way we respond when we are insulted, the way we treat those who can give us nothing in return. It is present when anger rises, and we decide whether to feed it or understand it. It is present when envy appears, and we decide whether to act from it or let it pass. This is why the teaching of karma is not merely a doctrine to believe in. It is a mirror. It brings us back to the living truth of our conduct. If we want peace, are we creating causes for peace? If we want trust, are we speaking truthfully? If we want love, are we practicing patience, listening, and goodwill? If we want a lighter heart, are we letting go of resentment? If we want wisdom, are we willing to look honestly at our own delusion? So often, people want the fruit without tending the root. We want happiness but continue feeding the habits that create conflict. We want respect but speak in ways that wound others. We want calm but fill the mind with craving and comparison. We want a good future but neglect the quality of our present actions. Then, when suffering comes, we ask, why is my luck so bad? But the Buddha invites us to ask a deeper question. What causes have I been nourishing? This question is not for blaming ourselves. It is for waking up. Blame is heavy and often useless. Responsibility, when understood wisely, is liberating. If everything were fixed by fate, then practice would have no meaning. If our life were controlled completely by unseen forces, then virtue would be powerless. But because karma is intentional action, change is possible. The angry person can learn patience. The greedy person can learn generosity. The careless person can learn mindfulness. The confused person can develop wisdom. The past has influence, yes, but it is not the whole story. The Buddha did not teach us to sit helplessly beneath the weight of what has already been done. He taught a path. A path means movement. It means that where we are now is not where we must remain. Even if old unwholesome karma has brought painful conditions, the present mind can choose not to add more fire. Even if life has been difficult, we can begin to create new causes. One sincere act of restraint, one moment of truthfulness, one breath of mindfulness, one gesture of compassion may seem small, but these are not small in the training of the heart. Consider how suffering grows. A painful event occurs. Someone insults us, disappoints us, or harms us. That event is one condition. But then the mind begins to build upon it. It repeats the story, adds anger, adds pride, adds revenge, adds self-pity. Soon the suffering becomes larger than the original wound. Here, karma is being made in the present, not because pain appeared, but because of how we respond to pain. And consider how peace grows. The same insult arrives. We feel it. But then mindfulness remembers. Anger is suffering. If I speak from this, I will plant more suffering. We breathe, we wait. We do not immediately strike back. Perhaps later we speak firmly, but not cruelly. We protect truth with that moment the old chain weakens, a new karma is formed. A new direction becomes possible. This is the real protection the Buddha points to. Not protection through fear, but protection through wisdom. Not protection by calculating lucky hours, but by guarding the doors of body, speech, and mind. A person who trains in wholesome karma carries a refuge that cannot be easily taken away. Wherever they go, they bring their practice with them. Whether the day is praised or blamed, whether the season is favorable or difficult, they know how to plant seeds of well-being. And this is why dependence on fortune-telling can become spiritually dangerous. Not because every person who seeks it is bad, but because it can quietly weaken responsibility. The mind begins to believe that the answer lies elsewhere. It waits for permission from signs. It fears invisible arrangements. It gives away its confidence. Instead of asking, "How can I purify my conduct?" it asks, "How can I avoid misfortune without changing my heart?" The Buddha's compassion is seen in the way he cuts through that confusion. He does not leave us trembling before destiny. He gives us something far more empowering, the lawfulness of cause and effect. If we cultivate greed, hatred, and delusion, suffering follows. If we cultivate generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, peace becomes possible. This is not superstition. It is moral clarity. It is a way of understanding life that restores dignity to human effort, of course. The fruits of karma may not ripen immediately. Sometimes a person acts badly and seems to prosper for a while. Sometimes a good person suffers deeply despite living with integrity. The Buddha never reduced life to a simple story where every action gives an instant visible result. Seeds ripen in different times and conditions. Some bear fruit quickly. Some take long seasons. Some are weakened by other causes. Some are strengthened by repetition. But none of this cancels the importance of intention. It only teaches us patience and depth. A farmer does not dig up the field every day shouting, "Where is the harvest?" He prepares the soil, plants the seed, waters it, protects it, and waits according to conditions. In the same way, the practitioner does not abandon goodness because the result is not immediate. We keep precepts because they protect the heart. We speak truth because truth is clean. We give because generosity loosens the fist of craving. We meditate because a trained mind suffers less. We forgive because hatred is too painful to carry. We practice not because someone promised us instant luck, but because wholesome causes are the only reliable ground for true well-being. When karma is understood in this way, we begin to see how profound the Buddha's teaching really is. It does not trap us in fatalism. It frees us from it. It does not say, "Your future is already written, so submit." It says, "Look carefully. Causes are being created. Be mindful of what you create." It does not say, "You are cursed by a day, a direction, a sign, or a star." It says, "Your heart can be trained. Your speech can be purified. Your actions can become noble." This is why the person who understands karma no longer needs to run after every prediction. They may still live respectfully within their culture. They may still choose convenient dates, organize their home with care, or appreciate traditional customs. But deep inside, they know where the real work lies. They do not confuse outer arrangements with inner liberation. They do not believe that changing the furniture can replace changing the mind. They do not believe that a favorable hour can erase harmful intention. They know that the true field of blessing is ethical conduct, meditation, and wisdom. And once we see karma as the true field of human responsibility, the question of lucky and unlucky days begins to change. We stop asking only, "Is this day good for me?" and begin asking, "Am I bringing goodness into this day?" We stop trembling before the calendar and begin caring for the mind that meets the calendar. We stop waiting for life to become favorable before we practice. And we begin to understand that practice itself is what makes life meaningful. Because in the light of the Dharma, a day becomes good when the heart becomes good. And yet, this is exactly where human beings so easily slip into misunderstanding. We begin to call some days lucky and others unlucky, as if the sky itself had quietly assigned them a moral value. We look at the calendar with hope or fear, and we speak about certain dates as if they carried invisible power in their own right. A wedding day must be chosen carefully. A business deal must wait for the right hour. A journey should begin only after the proper sign has appeared. A difficult conversation is postponed because the day feels wrong. Little by little, we place our confidence not in the quality of our mind, but in the label we attach to the day. And that habit is more than a superstition. It is a way of handing over responsibility. Because once we believe that a day itself is blessed or cursed, favorable or dangerous, we may stop looking honestly at our own conduct. We begin to think that if life goes badly, the reason must be hidden in the stars, the clock, the direction of the house, or the date chosen on the calendar. If life goes well, we may praise the good day while quietly ignoring the goodness of our own effort. In this way, the mind starts to lean outward, always searching for an excuse, always searching for a sign, always searching for a force outside itself to explain the results of its own actions. But the Buddha gently turns our attention back. He does not ask us to live in fear of time. He asks us to live wisely within time. From the Dhamma's point of view, a day is not born pure or impure, lucky or unlucky, holy or cursed. A day is simply a day. The sunrise does not carry intention. The morning wind does not punish or reward. The calendar does not bless one person and reject another. What gives a day its character is the human heart meeting that day. What gives a day its fragrance or its bitterness is the way we speak, think, choose, and act while we are living it. That is why a wholesome day is not created by a lucky number, but by the restraint not to harm. It is not created by an astrologer's prediction, but by a person who chooses truth over deception, generosity over grasping, patience over irritation, and mindfulness over carelessness. When the hands are gentle, the mouth honest, the mind is alert, and the heart is disciplined, then even an ordinary day becomes bright. It may still include traffic, fatigue, misunderstanding, and small disappointments, but it will not be empty. It will be filled with meaning, because goodness has been planted into it. Imagine one person who lives by waiting. He watches the calendar as though his life depends on it. He says, "Not today. Today is not right. I will begin when the signs are better." He postpones the apology he should make. He delays the habit he should change. He keeps telling himself that when the proper day arrives, he will become serious, honest, kind, and calm. But the day never truly arrives, because what he is waiting for is not a date. He is waiting for permission to become the person he should have been all along. And while he waits, anger continues to burn in him. He speaks harshly to the people near him. He tells lies to protect his image. He wastes the hours. He blames the circumstances. He may even feel anxious that the world is against him. Yet the deeper truth is harder to face. The day is not failing him. He is failing the day. Now imagine another person waking up on an ordinary morning. There is nothing especially special about the date. Nothing in the sky announces greatness. No secret sign says this is the perfect moment. And yet, this person rises with clarity. He remembers to be patient with the family member who speaks too sharply. He chooses not to return insult for insult. He keeps his promises. He works diligently. He gives what he can. He guards his speech. He notices the mind becoming restless and gently brings it back. He lives with care. To the outside eye, it may look like a plain day, but in the inner life, something noble is happening. This person is turning time into practice. He is making the ordinary sacred through conduct. He is showing that dignity does not come from the date on the page, but from the quality of the presence brought into each moment. This is the quiet revolution of the Buddha's teaching. It does not romanticize hardship, and it does not deny that some conditions are more supportive than others. Of course, the world has seasons, advantages, obstacles, and pressures. Of course, there are times when planning is wise, when caution is needed, when one should think carefully and act responsibly. But the Buddha does not let us confuse practical wisdom with magical dependence. He does not teach us to surrender our moral agency to fortune. He teaches us to develop the kind of mind that can meet any condition without losing integrity. A day becomes wholesome when we refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxication. A day becomes wholesome when we speak in a way that is true, useful, gentle, and timely. A day becomes wholesome when we give without calculating, when we listen without pride, when we remain awake to our own mind, rather than drifting through life on habit alone. A day becomes wholesome when we are careful with what we let in through the senses, because not everything seen, heard, or remembered deserves to rule the heart. A day becomes wholesome when mindfulness stands guard, and wisdom quietly keeps asking what leads to harm and what leads to peace. So the question is never only whether the day is good. The deeper question is whether we are good to the day. Are we bringing clarity into it, or confusion? Are we bringing restraint or reckless craving? Are we bringing kindness or irritation? Are we bringing honesty or self-deception? A day is shaped by these things far more than by any external label. This is why people can stand on the same ground, under the same sun, and live entirely different realities. For one person, the day is cursed because nothing goes exactly as planned. Every delay becomes an insult. Every inconvenience becomes a reason for complaint. Every person becomes a threat to his comfort. He may have chosen a beautiful date, but he carries poison in his heart. And poison does not become peaceful just because the calendar is favorable. For another person, the day may begin with no special promise at all. The room is ordinary. The errands are ordinary. The work may be routine. Yet because she meets the day with patience, kindness, diligence, and restraint, the day becomes luminous. She answers with grace instead of anger. She keeps her mind from wandering into regret or envy. She does what is right, even when no one is watching. And in that simple fidelity, the day becomes noble. That is the meaning of transforming life from the inside. Not every morning will be easy. Not every situation will be comfortable. But every moment can become a field for virtue. Every ordinary hour can become a training ground for liberation. A day is not good because it protects our ego. It is good because it gives us another opportunity to purify the heart. It is not the absence of challenge that makes a day precious. It is the presence of right action within whatever challenge appears. This is why the Buddha's view is so freeing. It releases us from fear without making us careless. It frees us from superstition without making us arrogant. It reminds us that we do not have to wait for the universe to become perfect before we can live well. We do not have to wait for the stars to align before we can be truthful. We do not have to wait for an auspicious time before we can be kind. We do not have to wait for a blessed hour before we can begin again. We can begin now. And this is the heart of the message. It is not a good day that makes a good person. It is a good person, living wholesomely, who makes any day good. The day is only the container. The conduct is what fills it. The hour is only the doorway. The mind is what walks through. The date may be written on the calendar, but the true blessing is written in the way we live. When this understanding settles deeply in the heart, the obsession with lucky and unlucky days slowly loses its grip. We become less interested in controlling time and more interested in refining ourselves. We stop asking whether life has chosen to favor us and start asking whether we are choosing to live wisely. We stop fearing ordinary mornings. We stop depending on perfect conditions. We begin to trust that goodness can be made wherever a person stands. This is the calm and steady vision of the Dharma. A person who lives with mindfulness, virtue, generosity, and wisdom does not need a specially selected day to become worthy. The day itself becomes worthy through that person's presence. This is why the Buddha's advice to monastics was firm when it came to earning a living through prediction and supernatural claims. For someone who has left home in search of freedom, the whole direction of life changes. A monk or nun is no longer meant to build a reputation, collect influence, or turn spiritual practice into a kind of hidden power. The robe is not meant to become a costume for authority. The monastery is not meant to become a place where people come looking for certainty about love, money, success, illness, or the future. The Buddha pointed his disciples back again and again to a much quieter path. Simple living, careful restraint, and steady practice aimed at the end of suffering. In that life, the monastic community depends on generosity. It receives food, shelter, robes, and medicine from lay supporters, not as payment for services, but as an offering made with faith. That relationship carries a deep responsibility. It asks monastics to live in a way that honors trust, not manipulation. If a monk begins offering fortune-telling, omen reading, dream interpretation, astrology, or date selecting in exchange for gifts and admiration, something subtle but serious has gone wrong. The robe may still be worn, the voice may still sound calm, but the heart has begun to drift toward worldly gain. The Buddha understood how easily human beings are drawn to mystery. When life feels uncertain, the mind reaches for signs. It wants reassurance. It wants a voice that says, "This will work," or "that will go badly," or "do this now, and your future will be safe." There is nothing strange about that longing. People have always wanted to know what lies ahead. They have wanted to reduce fear by borrowing certainty from someone else. But the Buddha saw the danger very clearly. If a spiritual life becomes a marketplace for certainty, then the Dhamma itself can be turned into a tool for control. It stops being a path of awakening and becomes a way of maintaining dependence. People come not to understand their minds, but to be told what to do. They seek not liberation, but reassurance. And the one who gives the prediction may slowly begin to enjoy the attention, the offerings, and the feeling of being special. This is why the early discipline rejected such occupations for monastics. Not because every prediction is automatically evil in a superficial sense, and not because comfort is always harmful. The deeper issue is the direction of the mind. Does this activity reduce greed, hatred, and delusion? Does it help a person become less attached, less frightened, less proud, less dependent? Or does it strengthen the very knots that bind beings to suffering? There is an old story told among villagers of a fisherman who, every season, paid a fortune teller to name the luckiest days to cast his nets. On the days declared favorable, he fished with confidence and often returned with a good catch, though the sea itself had not changed. On the days declared unfavorable, he stayed home, even when the winds were calm and the fish were plentiful, and he told himself that fate had simply not permitted his success that day. Over the years, his neighbors, who set out each morning regardless of any prediction, learned to read the currents, the weather, and the behavior of the fish. They came home tired but steady, their skill growing season by season. The fisherman, meanwhile, grew more anxious with every visit to the fortune teller, for each answer only produced a new question, and each comfort lasted only until the next uncertain morning. His dependence had not made him safer, it had only made him smaller, more fearful, and less able to trust his own eyes and his own hands. When a monk or nun claims special knowledge about worldly success, the immediate effect may seem harmless. People may feel soothed. They may leave the temple with a little more confidence, a little less anxiety, a lighter heart for the moment. But comfort alone is not the final measure in the Buddha's teaching. A medicine may taste sweet and still deepen the illness. A prediction may calm a person today and bind them more tightly tomorrow. If the mind becomes trained to seek answers outside itself, it can lose the courage to look honestly at its own intentions, habits, and actions. And that is exactly where the Buddha wanted practice to turn, inward toward direct seeing. A monastic life, in the Buddha's vision, is not meant to entertain the world's desires. It is meant to reveal the roots of suffering and to cut them at the root. That requires discipline. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to live without the easy rewards that come from pleasing people with mystical services. There is a certain simplicity in this path, and that simplicity is not a weakness. It is a protection. It guards the heart from becoming entangled in praise, superstition, and the endless hunger to be needed. Once a spiritual teacher begins to profit from predictions, a quiet shift can take place. The teaching starts bending toward expectation. Instead of asking what leads to liberation, the teacher begins asking what keeps people coming back. Instead of pointing people toward their own karma and responsibility, the teacher may start speaking in ways that feed dependency. The words may sound wise, even compassionate, but if they keep people leaning on outer signs instead of inner understanding, they are carrying them away from the path. The Buddha's concern was not narrow or merely disciplinary. It was compassionate in the deepest sense. He knew that beings suffer not only from pain, but from the stories they tell themselves about pain. They cling to luck. They fear omens. They chase certainty. They imagine that the future will finally save them, if only they can read it correctly. Yet the future is never truly mastered by such means. What shapes it is karma, intention, action, speech, and thought. This is why the Buddha kept bringing attention back to conduct, awareness, and wisdom. A monk or nun who teaches in this way becomes a mirror, not a magician. The mirror does not promise to control what will happen. It simply helps people see what is already there. A person may come hoping for a favorable date, a lucky sign, or a message from beyond. But the true gift of the Dhamma is much more demanding and much more freeing. Look at your mind. Look at your motives. Look at what you are planting now. That message does not flatter the ego. It does not guarantee comfort, but it does offer dignity. Because if your life is shaped by karma, then you are not helpless. You are not a leaf blown around by hidden forces. You are a participant in your own becoming. Every moment of greed can be answered by generosity. Every moment of anger can be answered by patience. Every moment of confusion can be answered by mindfulness. This is far more empowering than any prediction, because it gives responsibility back to the place where freedom can actually grow. The Buddha also knew how easily spiritual authority can be misused. A person who speaks with confidence about the unseen may quickly gain influence over those who are afraid. And fear makes people pliable. Fear makes them give more, obey more, and question less. When that happens, the teacher may appear helpful, but the relationship is no longer rooted in wisdom. It has become transactional. It is no longer about the end of suffering, but about maintaining a cycle of need. That is why the early monastic code draws such a clear boundary. The monastic life is not a career in mystery. It is a training in release. It is not built on selling certainty. It is built on relinquishing attachment to the demand for certainty. Monastics are called to live plainly, speak honestly, and help others cultivate insight. They are meant to embody a freedom that does not depend on signs, omens, or hidden calculations. This does not mean the Buddha asked people to become cold or dismissive of their worries. On the contrary, the Dhamma responds to fear with understanding. It says, fear can be seen, held, and transformed. Uncertainty can be lived through. Suffering can be known without fleeing into superstition. The path is not one of harsh denial, but of wise confidence. It teaches that peace does not come from predicting every turn of life. It comes from training the heart to meet each turn without being destroyed by it. So when the Buddha warned monastics against divination, he was protecting something precious. He was protecting the purity of the path. He was protecting the trust between the community and those who live by its support. He was protecting people from being drawn toward dependence on signs instead of confidence in karma. Most of all, he was protecting the possibility that spiritual life remains a path to freedom, not a service industry for worldly anxiety. This matters because the temptation never truly disappears. Even today, people long for someone to tell them what will happen. They want a safe bridge over uncertainty. And if a religious voice steps in with easy answers, many will follow. But the Buddha's way is gentler and stronger than that. It does not promise to remove all uncertainty. It teaches us how to stand within it without losing ourselves. That is the deeper beauty of the monastic renunciation the Buddha praised. It is a refusal to turn awakening into a performance. It is a refusal to turn the sacred into merchandise. It is a refusal to trade freedom for popularity. Yet many people still ask, if fortune-telling brings comfort, what exactly is the danger? The danger is not that a frightened person seeks comfort. The Buddha was never harsh toward human fear. He understood the trembling of the heart. He understood the mother who worries about her sick child, the farmer who fears a failed harvest, the husband and wife standing at the edge of separation, the young person unsure of which road to take, the grieving family who cannot bear the silence left behind by death. When life becomes uncertain, the mind naturally looks for a hand to hold. It wants a sign, a message, a promise that the pain will not swallow everything. So we must begin with compassion. Fortune-telling can feel comforting. A prediction can feel like a lamp in a dark room. When someone says, "Do not worry, after this month things will improve," the chest may soften for a moment. When someone says, "This relationship is destined to heal," the lonely heart may breathe again. When someone says, "Avoid this date, choose that day, perform this ritual, wear this object, face this direction," it may feel as if chaos has been given a shape. The mind, which was drowning in uncertainty, suddenly feels that there is a map, and in difficult moments, even a temporary map can be very seductive. A person who has lost money may go to a fortune teller because numbers and debts have become too heavy to face. A person with illness may seek astrological answers because the body feels unreliable and doctors cannot guarantee the outcome. A parent may ask about the future of a child because love makes the unknown almost unbearable. A person in grief may want to know whether the departed one is safe somewhere, whether the separation is final, whether there is still a hidden thread connecting one heart to another. These longings are not foolish, they are human. But the Buddha's teaching invites us to look deeper. There is a comfort that heals, and there is a comfort that quietly binds. There is a kind word that helps a person stand up again, and there is a promise that makes a person unable to stand without it. There is guidance that returns us to wisdom, and there is guidance that trains us to doubt our own capacity to meet life with mindfulness, virtue, patience, and courage. This is where the danger begins at first. A person may consult a prediction only during a crisis. They feel confused, so they ask, "What will happen?" They feel afraid, so they ask, "Will I be safe?" So they ask, "Which path?" And perhaps the answer brings relief. Perhaps they sleep better that night. Perhaps they feel lighter for a few days. The prediction becomes associated with peace. But if the mind is not careful, it begins to learn the wrong lesson. Instead of learning, "I can calm myself, I can observe fear, I can act wisely, I can create wholesome causes," it learns, "I cannot move unless someone tells me the future." Instead of becoming stronger through uncertainty, the heart becomes dependent on certainty. Instead of developing mindfulness, it develops the habit of asking permission from signs. Then the circle widens. A person no longer asks only about illness or marriage or livelihood. They begin to ask about small things too. Is this a good day to travel? Is this person safe to trust? Should I send this message today or tomorrow? Should I move my desk? Should I sign the paper? Should I begin this project? Should I visit my family? Should I speak the truth now or wait for a lucky hour? Slowly, life is no longer guided by clear intention, ethical reflection, and wise effort. It becomes guided by predictions. The person may believe they are becoming more protected, but in truth they are becoming less free. Every choice must pass through an external voice. Every step must be approved by an unseen arrangement. Every uncertainty becomes a reason to seek another answer. And because life is uncertain by nature, the seeking never ends. One prediction leads to another prediction. One warning creates a new fear. One ritual leads to another ritual. One bad sign makes the mind search for a remedy, and the remedy creates fear of doing it incorrectly. If the result turns out well, the person thinks, "It worked. I must keep doing it." If the result turns out badly, the person thinks, "I did not do enough. I must find a stronger method." In both cases, dependence grows. This is the quiet trap, yet it becomes more anxious. It receives answers, yet it becomes less confident. It collects signs, dates, objects, rituals, and instructions, yet it loses the simple strength of knowing, "I am responsible for my actions. I can choose what is wholesome. I can endure what is painful. I can begin again." In Buddhist training, this loss of self-responsibility is serious. The Buddha taught that beings are owners of their actions, heirs to their actions, born of their actions, related to their actions, and supported by their actions. This teaching is not meant to make us feel burdened. It is meant to give us dignity. It tells us that our lives are not helplessly ruled by stars, numbers, omens, or the opinions of those who claim to read destiny. It tells us that every moment contains a field of practice. Every tension matters. Every word matters. Every act of generosity, restraint, patience, truthfulness, and wisdom plants a seed. But when a person becomes dependent on fortune-telling, the center of life shifts. Instead of asking, "What intention am I cultivating?" the person asks, "What did the prediction say?" Instead of asking, "Is this action rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion?" the person asks, "Is this date favorable?" Instead of asking, "Will this choice reduce suffering for myself and others?" the person asks, "Is my destiny supporting it?" This may sound harmless at first, but over time it weakens the very qualities the path is meant to strengthen. The Buddhist path trains courage because we must face aging, illness, loss, change, and death without pretending they can be escaped by lucky arrangements. It trains mindfulness because we must observe the movements of the mind directly, not cover them with endless external explanations. It trains ethical clarity because wholesome and unwholesome actions have consequences, whether they are performed on a so-called lucky day or an unlucky one. It trains wisdom because wisdom sees causes and conditions, not superstition disguised as certainty. When fear arises, the Buddha does not ask us to run immediately towards someone who can guarantee the future. He invites us to sit closer to the fear and understand it. What is this trembling made of? What am I clinging to? What do I think I cannot lose? What story is the mind creating? What action can I take that is honest, compassionate, and wise? This is not always comfortable. In fact, it may be much harder than receiving a prediction. A prediction can give quick relief. Practice asks for patience. A ritual can make us feel instantly safer. Mindfulness asks us to remain present with discomfort. A fortune teller may offer an answer in one sentence. The path asks us to observe our conduct day after day, to purify speech, to restrain harmful impulses, to cultivate kindness even when afraid. But only one of these leads to freedom. The Buddha's teaching on suffering begins with honesty. There is suffering, there is unease, there is uncertainty, there is the pain of wanting life to be stable when life is always changing. The teaching does not cover this truth with decoration. It does not say, "Find the perfect date and you will not suffer." It does not say, "Arrange the world perfectly and your heart will never break." It says, "Look, direct, understand the cause, see craving, clinging, ignorance, and fear, then cultivate the path that leads beyond them." This is a profound difference. The mind that depends on fortune-telling wants an external guarantee that life will not hurt. The mind that practices the Dharma learns how not to be destroyed when life hurts. The first tries to control the unknown. The second learns wisdom within the unknown. The first asks, "How can I avoid every misfortune?" The second asks, "How can I meet whatever arises without creating more suffering?" Of course, a practitioner may still plan carefully. Buddhism does not teach carelessness. It does not say, "Do not prepare, do not think, do not choose wisely." If you are sick, you seek medicine. If you are in debt, you make a responsible plan. If a relationship is in trouble, you communicate with honesty and compassion. If a journey is dangerous, you consider conditions. Wisdom includes practical discernment. But practical discernment is different from superstition. Planning is based on visible causes and conditions. Dependency is based on fear of invisible threats. Wise action asks, what can be understood? What can be done? What is wholesome? Superstitious dependence asks, what hidden force might punish me if I choose wrongly? This fear can become very heavy. A person may begin to feel that one wrong date, one wrong direction, one missed ritual, one disobedient step could ruin everything. Instead of feeling supported by the Dhamma, They feel surrounded by danger. The world becomes a field of signs to decode, warnings to avoid, and invisible rules to obey. Even happiness becomes fragile because it seems to depend on maintaining the correct formula. The Buddha's way releases the heart from this burden. It brings us back to what is direct and immediate. In this moment, is the mind greedy or generous? Is it harsh or kind? Is it confused or attentive? Is the speech truthful? Is the action harmless? Is the livelihood clean? Is the heart cultivating compassion? These questions may seem simple, but they are powerful. They return authority to the place where transformation actually happens, our own intentions. A person who understands karma does not need to know every detail of the future in order to live well. They know that if they plant anger, anger will bear fruit. If they plant deceit, mistrust will follow. If they plant generosity, the heart opens. If they plant patience, suffering softens. If they plant wisdom, confusion weakens. The exact timing and shape of results may not always be predictable, because life is woven from countless causes and conditions, but the moral direction is clear. This clarity is deeper than prediction. Predictions may say, this month is unlucky, but the Dharma says, this moment can still be used for kindness. Predictions may say, your path is blocked, but the Dharma says, remove the causes of suffering where you can, and cultivate wholesome effort. Predictions may say, you are destined for hardship. But the Dhamma says hardship can become a field for patience, insight, compassion, and liberation. This is not naive optimism. It is spiritual maturity. It does not deny that painful results may come. It does not pretend that all suffering can be avoided by positive thinking. It simply refuses to surrender the heart's freedom to fear. It teaches that even when conditions are difficult, we can still choose how to relate to them. We can choose not to add hatred to pain. We can choose not to add panic to uncertainty. We can choose not to add harmful action to fear. And this choice is precious. Imagine someone who has heard a frightening prediction. They are told that misfortune is coming, that a certain year will be dangerous, that a relationship will collapse, that illness may appear, that business will fail. If the mind believes completely, it may begin to suffer before anything has happened. It may become suspicious, tense, and defensive. It may treat loved ones with anxiety. It may avoid opportunities out of fear. It may make poor decisions because it is trying to escape an imagined future. In this way, the prediction itself becomes a cause of suffering. Not because the stars forced anything, but because the mind received fear, believed it, fed it, and acted from it. This is why the Buddha's emphasis is so compassionate. He does not want people to live imprisoned by imagined futures. He does not want them to become servants of anxiety. He points them back to direct knowing. This is fear. This is craving for certainty. This is the mind seeking safety in what cannot truly provide safety. See it clearly, breathe with it. Do not obey it blindly. Return to the path. When we practice in this way, we may still feel uncertain, but uncertainty no longer controls us. We may still make plans, but we do not worship plans. We may still receive advice, but we do not abandon discernment. We may still experience fear, but we do not build a temple around it. The true refuge in Buddhism is not prediction. It is not the promise that nothing painful will happen. The true refuge is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, awakening, truth, and the noble community of practice. To take refuge is to trust that liberation is possible through understanding, not through dependency. It is to trust that the mind can be trained. It is to trust that wholesome causes matter. It is to trust that wisdom is stronger than fear. This is why temporary comfort must be examined carefully. If something comforts us and then returns us to responsibility, mindfulness, and compassion, it may have served a gentle purpose. But if it comforts us by making us dependent, fearful, passive, or morally careless, then it has become a trap. The question is not simply, does this make me feel better? The deeper question is, does this make me freer? because not every comfort is freedom. Some comforts are golden chains. The Buddha's path asks us to grow beyond the need to know everything before we live. It asks us to walk with sincerity, even when the road is not fully visible. It asks us to understand that a good future is not manufactured by fearfully consulting the unknown, but by carefully cultivating wholesome causes now. If we want safety, let us be harmless. If we want trust, let us be truthful. If we want peace, let us reduce craving and hatred. If we want blessings, let us become a blessing to others. And when the heart understands this, it becomes less hungry for predictions. Not because all questions disappear, but because a deeper confidence has appeared. The person no longer needs to ask permission from the future in order to do what is right today. The same principle applies to feng shui and the search for perfect external arrangements. For many people, feng shui is not merely a superstition. It is tied to a very human longing, the wish to live in a place that feels safe, bright, welcoming, and in harmony. A home is not just walls and a roof. It is where children grow, where elders rest, where meals are shared, where tears are hidden, where tired hearts return after long days in the world. So when people care about the arrangement of their home, when they want more light, more cleanliness, more balance, more freshness, we should not look at that desire with contempt. There is something wholesome in wanting one's living space to support peace. A clean room can help the mind feel less burdened. A well-ordered table can make daily life easier. A window open to sunlight and air can lift the heart. A small place set aside for silence, reflection, or prayer can remind the family to pause before speaking harshly. Even the simple act of sweeping the floor can become a practice of mindfulness if it is done with a calm and attentive mind. In this sense, caring for space can be an expression of care for life. The Buddha's teaching is not a call to neglect the world around us. It is not a teaching that says, external things do not matter at all. We are body and mind. We live among sounds, colors, weather, people, objects, and memories. A peaceful environment can support wholesome states. A chaotic environment can sometimes agitate the mind. A home full of noise, dirt, and disorder may make patience more difficult. A home that is clean, simple, and cared for may make it easier to breathe, to speak, and to remember what is important. But the question is, support is not the same as salvation. A room may support peace, but it cannot create virtue for us. A direction may be pleasant, but it cannot purify the heart. A color may be soothing, but it cannot erase the consequences of harmful action. A door may face what people call an auspicious direction, but if those who enter through it bring greed, anger, deceit, and jealousy, then what kind of fortune can that door truly bring? This is where the Buddhist view becomes very clear and very practical. Arranging a home for comfort, cleanliness, safety, and beauty is one thing. Believing that furniture, directions, objects, numbers, or colors can override the law of karma is another. The first can be wise and harmless. The second can become a form of dependency. If someone moves a bed because the new position helps them sleep better, there is no problem. Good sleep supports health. If someone opens a window because fresh air makes the home feel lighter, there is no problem. Fresh air is beneficial. If someone places a small image of the Buddha in a respectful corner, and that image reminds them to be patient, honest, and compassionate, then that corner becomes meaningful through the mind that uses it. But if someone believes that by placing an object in a certain corner bar, they can continue to speak cruelly, exploit others, neglect their parents, deceive their customers, and still be protected from suffering, then they have misunderstood the path. The Buddha did not teach that life is controlled by the angle of a table. He taught that intention is karma. He taught that actions of body, speech, produce results. He taught that greed, hatred, and delusion lead to suffering, while generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom lead to welfare and peace. This is not a mysterious doctrine meant only for monks in forests. It is a truth we can see in our own homes. Imagine a house that is beautifully arranged. The entrance is elegant. The garden is carefully designed. The furniture is expensive. The colors are chosen according to expert advice. Every object is placed where it is believed to attract wealth, health, and harmony. But inside that house, the husband and wife speak to each other with contempt. The children are afraid to make mistakes. Meals are eaten in silence. Not because of peace, but because resentment has grown too heavy. People shout behind closed doors. They keep score of old wounds. They do not apologize. They do not forgive. They smile for guests. But in private, they sharpen their words like knives. Can we call that a fortunate house? Now imagine another home. It is small. The walls are old. The furniture does not match. There is no expensive arrangement, no special calculation of direction, no decoration meant to summon prosperity. But in that home, people greet each other warmly. When food is cooked, a portion is shared with someone in need. When an elder speaks, the younger ones listen with respect. When anger arises, someone has the courage to stop, breathe, and soften the voice. When mistakes happen, there is correction without humiliation. There may be financial difficulty, but there is also gratitude. There may be illness, but there is care. There may be uncertainty, but there is trust. Which home has better energy? The true atmosphere of a home is made not only by space, but by karma. The fragrance of a home comes from speech. Its warmth comes from generosity. Its protection comes from virtue. Its brightness comes from wisdom. Its peace comes from the restraint of anger and the cultivation of compassion. A house becomes a refuge when the people inside practice harmlessness. A room becomes sacred when the mind inside it turns toward truth. This does not mean that outer space has no value. It means that outer space must be placed in its proper position. It is a condition, not a master. It can assist, but it cannot replace inner training. A clean house may encourage a clear mind, but only if the mind is willing to be clear. A quiet room may support meditation, but only if the person sitting there is willing to observe desire, fear, irritation, and pride. A beautiful altar may inspire devotion, but if devotion never becomes kindness, patience, and honesty, then the altar remains decoration. Sometimes people spend great effort adjusting the outside, while refusing to look at the inside. They change the position of the sofa, but not the habit of harsh speech. They worry about which direction the bed faces, but not about the bitterness they carry into sleep. They place symbols of wealth in the house, but continue to earn money through dishonesty. They seek objects to attract love, but do not practice listening, forgiveness, or loyalty. They ask whether the kitchen is in the right place, but not whether the meals cooked there are shared with gratitude or eaten with complaints. The Buddha would gently turn our attention back to the essential question. Not only, where is the door, but what kind of mind walks through this door? Not only, where is the bed, but what kind of thoughts are carried into rest each night? Not only, which direction is lucky, but in what direction is my life moving? Toward greed or toward generosity? Toward anger or toward compassion? Toward delusion or toward understanding? A person may enter a house from the most auspicious direction, but if he enters with a mind burning with envy, he brings suffering with him. Another person may enter through a poor and simple doorway, but if she enters with gratitude, gentleness, and mindfulness, she brings blessing into that space. The real direction that matters is the direction of the heart. This is why the Dharma gives us a deeper form of protection. It does not promise that we can arrange life so that nothing painful ever happens. It teaches us how to live in such a way that when pleasure comes, we are not intoxicated, and when pain comes, we are not destroyed. It teaches us to build an inner dwelling, a dwelling of virtue, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. A person who keeps the precepts carries protection wherever they go. If they refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxicants that lead to heedlessness, they create safety around themselves. People feel less afraid in their presence. Their own mind becomes less troubled by guilt. Their home, even if simple, becomes more trustworthy. Their sleep becomes lighter because they are not haunted by the harm they have done. A person who practices generosity changes the feeling of a place. Their kitchen becomes more than a place to prepare food. It becomes a place where kindness is expressed. Their earnings become more than personal security. They become a means to support parents, children, friends, the sick, the poor, and the noble community. Generosity loosens the tight fist of fear. It tells the home, we do not live only for ourselves. A person who practices loving kindness changes the sound of a house. Words become less violent, silence becomes less cold, correction becomes less cruel. Even when disagreement arises, it is held within the wish not to harm. This does not mean a home without problems. Every family has difficulties. Every relationship carries moments of misunderstanding. But when loving kindness is practiced, conflict does not have to become a battlefield. It can become a place of learning. A person who practices mindfulness changes the rhythm of daily life. They notice when anger begins before it explodes. They notice when craving begins before it becomes obsession. They notice when pride wants to win an argument more than it wants to understand. In this way, mindfulness is a kind of inner architecture. It creates space between feeling and reaction. It opens a window in the mind. And a person who develops wisdom begins to understand what can and cannot be controlled. We can clean the house, but we cannot prevent all dust forever. We can arrange the furniture, but we cannot arrange the entire world according to our wishes. We can care for our family, but we cannot protect them from aging, sickness, and death by charms or directions. We can make plans, but we cannot command impermanence to obey us. Wisdom does not make the heart cold, it makes the heart honest. It teaches us to love deeply without clinging blindly. When seen in this way, the Buddhist approach to space is neither hostile nor naive. It does not mock those who want a harmonious home. It does not forbid beauty, order, or thoughtful arrangement, but it asks us not to confuse the container with the contents. A golden bowl filled with poison is still dangerous. A clay bowl filled with clean water still refreshes the thirsty. The moral quality of life does not come from appearance alone. It comes from what is actually being cultivated. If feng shui encourages someone to keep the home clean, to reduce clutter, to bring in light, to create a peaceful corner for reflection, then those actions can be beneficial when held with wisdom. But if it leads someone to fear, obsession, blame, or dependency, then it becomes another chain. If a family begins to believe that their unhappiness comes only from the placement of objects, they may never look at the impatience, selfishness, or lack of communication that is truly wounding them. If a person believes that wealth is blocked by a direction, they may ignore laziness, wastefulness, greed, or unethical livelihood. If someone believes that misfortune comes from an unlucky object, they may fail to examine their own choices. The Dharma invites us to be brave enough to look closer. What is being built in this house each day? When the morning begins, is it begun with irritation or gratitude? When money is discussed, is it discussed with honesty or manipulation? When children make mistakes, are they guided or shamed? When guests come, are they welcomed with sincerity or measured by status? When someone is tired, does the family offer tenderness or criticism? When anger appears, does everyone feed it, or does someone remember the path? These are not small questions. These are the true foundations of a home. A house stands on the ground, but a family stands on conduct. If conduct is broken, even a mansion trembles. If conduct is strong, even a modest room can hold great peace. This is why the Buddha placed such emphasis on sila, moral discipline. Not because morality is a rule imposed from outside, but because it is the ground upon which happiness can safely grow. Without virtue, blessings leak away. Without honesty, trust collapses. Without restraint, love becomes wounded. Without wisdom, comfort becomes attachment. So perhaps the question is not, is my home lucky? Perhaps the deeper question is my home a place where wholesome karma is created? Do people leave this home feeling lighter or heavier? Do the words spoken here heal or harm? Does this space encourage mindfulness or distraction? Does it support generosity or selfishness? Does it remind us of what matters, or does it keep feeding comparison and desire? When a Buddhist enters a home, the most important arrangement is not only the placement of objects, but the arrangement of the heart. Is faith placed near daily action, or left far away as a decoration? Is patience placed where anger usually sits? Is gratitude placed at the dining table? Is compassion placed near the sickbed? Is truth placed at the doorway, so that every person who enters and leaves does so with integrity? This is the kind of feng shui the Dharma points toward, not the manipulation of unseen forces for worldly gain, but the harmonizing of life with wholesome causes. The most auspicious house is the house where no one is intentionally harmed. The most fortunate room is the room where the mind becomes calm. The most beautiful direction is the direction that leads away from greed, hatred, and delusion. And when we understand this, we can care for our homes without fear. We can sweep, arrange, decorate, repair, and beautify, but we do not kneel before furniture as if it rules our destiny. We can enjoy sunlight without believing it cancels unwholesome action. We can choose simplicity without feeling poor. We can create order outside while remembering that the greater work is inside. Because in the end, a peaceful home is not made only by where things are placed. It is made by how people live. It is made when someone chooses not to answer anger with anger. It is made when someone tells the truth, though lying would be easier. It is made when food is shared, when elders are honored, when children are loved without being spoiled, when apologies are offered before pride hardens, when silence is used for reflection and not punishment. Such a home may not be perfect. No human home is perfect, but it becomes a place of practice. It becomes a small monastery in the middle of ordinary life. The kitchen, the bedroom, the doorway, the garden, the table, all become fields where karma is planted. And day by day, through speech, action, intention, and awareness, the atmosphere changes. From the arrangement of space, we now turn inward to the arrangement of the heart. For the Buddha's path shows us that the deepest harmony is not achieved by moving objects alone, but by cultivating precepts, generosity, meditation, and wisdom. When the heart is rightly arranged, even a simple place becomes bright. When the heart is untrained, even the most perfect arrangement cannot bring lasting peace. So, if the true harmony of a life is not found merely in the direction of a door, the placement of a bed, or the number written on a calendar, then where should a sincere person place their trust? The Buddha's answer is simple, but very deep. He pointed us toward the qualities that can be cultivated in the heart and expressed through daily living. These qualities do not depend on the stars. They do not depend on the predictions of another person. They do not vanish when the date changes. They travel with us wherever we go, into every home, every workplace, every relationship, every moment of uncertainty. These are the true auspicious foundations of life: virtue, generosity, practice, and wisdom. The first foundation is virtue. In the Buddhist path, virtue is not a decoration for religious people. It is not a rule imposed from outside to make life narrow or heavy. Virtue is protection. It is a shelter for the heart. It is the quiet strength that allows a person to walk through life without constantly fearing the consequences of their own actions. When a person keeps the precepts, they are not trying to please an invisible force. They are learning how not to harm themselves and others. They train in refraining from killing, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, from false speech. and from intoxicants that cloud the mind. These precepts may sound simple, but when lived sincerely, they transform the whole direction of a life. A person who does not harm living beings becomes a source of safety. Around them, others can breathe more easily. A person who does not steal becomes trustworthy. Their presence does not create fear or suspicion. A person who respects relationships and boundaries protects not only themselves, but also families, friendships, and communities from deep wounds. A person who speaks truthfully brings clarity into the world. Their words become dependable. And a person who avoids heedlessness protects the mind from falling into actions that later bring shame, regret, and sorrow. This is why virtue is more reliable than any prediction. A fortune teller may say, "This year will be good for you." But if a person lives carelessly, speaks cruelly, deceives others, and follows every impulse of greed and anger, how can that year remain good? On the other hand, someone may be told, "This month is unlucky," but if that person lives with integrity, patience, kindness, and self-restraint, then even difficulty becomes a field for merit and growth. Virtue does not promise that nothing painful will ever happen. The Buddha never taught such a fantasy. Life contains aging, illness, separation, disappointment, and change, but virtue gives the heart a stable ground. It reduces remorse. It allows a person to speak with less disturbance. It allows them to look back at the day and say, "Today at least I tried not to harm. Today I protected my mind. Today I did not betray what I know to be wholesome." There is a quiet happiness in that many people search for auspicious signs because they want to feel safe. But the deepest safety begins when our own conduct becomes clean. No charm is as powerful as harmlessness. No ritual is as beautiful as honesty. No lucky hour is more meaningful than the moment when a person chooses not to return anger with anger, not to answer greed with greed, not to follow hatred when hatred is rising. Virtue makes the heart bright. And when the heart is bright, the world is already less frightening. The second foundation is generosity. If virtue protects the heart from causing harm, generosity opens the heart beyond itself. It loosens the tight knot of me and mine. It teaches us that life is not made richer by holding everything tightly, but by allowing goodness to flow. In many cultures, people make offerings in order to gain luck. They give something with the hope that fortune will return quickly, perhaps in wealth, success, protection, or fulfilled wishes. But in the Buddha's teaching, generosity is not a business with the universe. It is a training of the heart. It is a way of weakening attachment, softening selfishness, and creating wholesome causes. To give is to say, "I do not need to be imprisoned by clinging." It may be the giving of food, money, medicine, time, attention, forgiveness, encouragement, or simple kindness. A poor person can give, a rich person can give, an elder can give. Sometimes the smallest gift offered with sincerity carries a fragrance greater than a large gift given only for praise. Generosity changes the giver first. When we give, we begin to see the suffering of others. We remember that our own comfort is not the center of the universe. We become less isolated inside our own desires. The hand that opens to give also opens the mind, and when the mind opens, joy can enter. Think of a person who has been anxious about their future, constantly wondering, "Will I have enough? Will I be safe? Will I succeed?" If that person never practices giving, fear easily becomes stronger. The heart begins to believe that survival depends only on accumulation. More money, more possessions, more control, more guarantees. But the more tightly the heart grasps, the more it trembles. Generosity interrupts that trembling. It reminds us, I can share, I can contribute, I can participate in goodness. And from that act, a different kind of confidence arises. Not the confidence of someone who believes they can control everything, but the confidence of someone who knows they can plant wholesome seeds under any circumstance. Generosity also builds community. A family where people give to one another becomes warmer. A neighborhood where people help one another becomes more human. A society where generosity is honored becomes less cruel. The Buddha praised giving because it nourishes both the visible world and the invisible landscape of the mind. And generosity continues beyond the moment of giving. The food offered today may strengthen someone's body. The kind words spoken today may prevent someone from giving up. The time given today may become a memory that supports another person for years. The teaching shared today may guide a heart through darkness. In this way, a single act of giving can become a cause that ripples quietly into the future. This is true blessing, not because the act magically changes the stars, but because it changes the stream of causes and conditions. It changes the giver. It supports the receiver. It creates connection. It brings gladness before, during, and after the act. And a heart that knows the joy of giving is already living in a fortunate way. The third foundation is practice. Virtue guides our actions. Generosity opens our heart. But without practice, the mind still runs wildly. It still reacts before it understands. It still believes every thought, follows every mood, and is carried away by every wave of fear, desire, memory, and expectation. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. Practice means returning to the present moment with honesty. It means observing the body, the feelings, the mind, and the patterns that arise within us. It means learning to see anger as anger, fear as fear, craving as craving, without immediately becoming their servant. For many people, superstition becomes attractive because the present moment feels too uncertain. They want signs to tell them what will happen. They want someone to read the future because they do not know how to sit peacefully with not knowing. The untrained mind finds uncertainty unbearable. It wants answers quickly, even if those answers are unreliable. But meditation teaches another way. When we sit quietly and watch the breath, we begin to discover that we can be with uncertainty without being destroyed by it. The breath comes in, the breath goes out. A thought arises, a thought passes, a fear appears, a fear changes. A desire burns, a desire fades. Little by little we see that the mind is not a solid command, it is a flowing process. This seeing is very powerful. A person who practices mindfulness begins to pause before reacting. Someone insults them, and instead of immediately striking back, they feel the heat in the chest, the tightening in the face, the impulse to speak harshly. In that small space of awareness, freedom begins. They may still feel anger, but they no longer have to become anger. They may still feel fear, but they no longer have to obey fear completely. This is a blessing no calendar can give. A so-called lucky day cannot stop an untrained mind from creating suffering. But a trained moment of mindfulness can stop a harmful word, prevent a foolish action, soften a conflict, and protect a relationship. One breath taken with awareness can change the direction of karma. Practice also teaches patience. We begin to understand that transformation is not instant. Just as a tree does not grow because we shout at it, the heart does not become peaceful by force. It grows through repeated care. One mindful breath, one moment of restraint, one honest reflection, one return after distraction, one apology after failure, one renewed intention after falling down. This is the quiet path, not dramatic, not showy, not dependent on mystical promises, but deeply effective. Through practice, we become less blind. We see our habits. We see what leads to suffering and what leads to peace. We stop blaming every difficulty on fate, spirits, unlucky directions, or bad days. We begin to recognize our own participation in the unfolding of our lives. And this recognition is not meant to create guilt. It is meant to awaken responsibility. If suffering has causes, then peace also has causes. If confusion has been cultivated, clarity can be cultivated. If anger has been repeated, patience can be repeated. If fear has been fed, trust in the Dharma can be nourished. Practice shows us that the present moment is not empty, it is alive with possibility. The fourth foundation is wisdom. Wisdom is the light that helps us see things as they truly are. Without wisdom, even virtue can become pride. Generosity can become a search for praise. Meditation can become attachment to peaceful feelings. But with wisdom, the path becomes balanced and liberating. The Buddha's wisdom begins with seeing impermanence. Everything changes. The body changes. Feelings change. Relationships change. Wealth changes. Reputation changes. Success changes. Failure changes. The mind changes from morning to evening, sometimes from one breath to the next. When we do not understand impermanence, we cling to things as if they can give permanent security. And when they shift, we suffer. This is one reason people become desperate to control life through signs, rituals, predictions, and auspicious timings. Deep down, they sense that life is unstable. They want something to hold on to. They want to know what will happen so they can avoid pain and secure pleasure. But wisdom gently tells us, the problem is not only that we do not know the future. The deeper problem is that we cling to what cannot be controlled. Seeing impermanence does not make life cold. It makes life precious. Because this day will not return, we should live it with care. Because the people we love are not permanent, we should speak to them with kindness. Because the body is fragile, we should not waste it in heedlessness. Because the mind can change, we should train it while we can. Wisdom also sees suffering or unsatisfactoriness. It understands that anything conditioned cannot provide final refuge. Even pleasant things, when clung to, bring anxiety. We fear losing them. We want them to continue. We suffer when they change. And this does not mean we cannot enjoy life. It means we learn to enjoy without being enslaved. We appreciate without grasping. We care without trying to possess. Then wisdom sees non-self. This is subtle, but deeply freeing. The thoughts that arise are not a permanent self. The emotions that pass through us are not a permanent self. The roles we carry, parent, child, worker, friend, success, failure, are not a fixed essence. They are changing conditions. When we understand this, we do not need to defend every opinion as me. We do not need to turn every criticism into a wound. We do not need to build an identity out of fear, pride, or regret. And wisdom sees cause and effect. This is central to the Buddha's teaching. Our lives are shaped by causes and conditions. Some causes come from the past. Some are being created right now. We may not control everything that arrives, but we can choose how we respond. We can plant new causes. We can stop feeding old suffering. We can nourish wholesome qualities and abandon unwholesome ones. This understanding frees the mind from helplessness. If everything were controlled by fate, there would be no path. If everything were controlled by stars, effort would be meaningless. If happiness depended only on lucky hours and favorable directions, then virtue, compassion, and wisdom would be secondary. But the Buddha placed responsibility back into the hands of each person, not as a burden, but as dignity. You are not merely a victim of signs. You are not a prisoner of predictions. You are an heir to your karma, and also a maker of new karma. Every intention matters. Every choice matters. Every moment of awareness matters. This is why wisdom is the highest auspicious foundation. It does not simply comfort us. It liberates us from wrong views. It helps us stop bowing before fear. It helps us stop chasing certainty in places where certainty cannot be found. It teaches us to look directly at life and ask, what is wholesome? What leads to harm? What leads to peace? What causes suffering to grow? What causes suffering to cease? When virtue, generosity, practice, and wisdom come together, a person's life becomes truly fortunate, not perfect, not free from all hardship, not guaranteed to unfold according to desire, but fortunate in the deepest sense, because the heart has direction. The person knows how to live. They know what to protect. They know what to cultivate. They know where to return when fear becomes loud. Such a person may still choose a convenient day for a wedding, a business opening, a journey, or an important meeting. There is nothing wrong with practical planning. but they do not believe that the date alone can replace wholesome conduct. They do not imagine that a beautiful ceremony can cover careless living. They do not place their entire hope in external arrangements while neglecting the garden of the heart. They understand that a good day is made by good causes. If on that day they speak truthfully, act kindly, give generously, practice mindfulness, and remember the Dharma, then that day has become bright. If on that day they restrain anger, help someone in need, reflect wisely, and avoid harming others, then that day has become auspicious. Even if rain falls, plans change. Even if difficulties arise, the heart has not wasted the day. And if a day begins badly, wisdom does not say, "This day is ruined." Practice says, "Begin again." Virtue says, "Do not add more harm." Generosity says, "Open the heart." Wisdom says, "This too is changing." In that way, the person transforms the day from within. This is the beauty of the Buddha's path. It does not leave us waiting helplessly for the world to become favorable. It invites us to become skillful right where we are. In a small room, in a crowded city, in a poor village, in a wealthy home, in youth, in old age, in success, in disappointment. The path can still be practiced. The true blessing is not far away. It is in the hand that refuses to harm. It is in the mouth that chooses truthful and gentle speech. It is in the heart that gives without demanding. It is in the breath that returns to awareness. It is in the understanding that every conditioned thing changes, and that peace is cultivated through causes. When these foundations are strong, the questions we ask about life begin to change completely. Instead of asking, "Is this day lucky?" we begin to ask, "What can I do with this day?" Instead of asking, "Will the future favor me?" we begin to ask, "What causes am I planting now?" Instead of asking, "How can I control everything?" we begin to ask, "How can I meet this moment with wisdom, kindness, and clarity?" And from these new questions, a new way of living quietly begins to form. A person may still wake up on an ordinary morning, with bills to pay, work to do, family concerns to carry, and uncertainty waiting at the door. But instead of searching the sky for signs, they look inward first. They ask whether their speech today can be more careful, whether their actions can be more honest, whether their mind can be less easily pulled by fear. They may offer a simple kindness, restrain one harsh word, sit silently with one breath, or remember that this difficulty too is not permanent. Such moments may appear small, but in the Buddha's teaching they are never small. They are seeds, and when planted again and again, they become the real fortune of a human life. When we begin to see these moments as seeds, something inside us slowly changes. The mind that once ran anxiously toward the future begins to turn gently toward the present. The question that used to dominate our heart was, "What will happen to me?" It sounded innocent, even practical, but beneath it there was often fear. Fear of losing, fear of failure, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being protected by some unseen arrangement of fate. And when fear asks the question, it rarely waits for wisdom to answer. It rushes toward fortune tellers, lucky dates, auspicious directions, signs in the stars, names, numbers, omens, and promises. It wants certainty. It wants someone to say, "Do this, and nothing bad will happen." It wants the future to bow down and become safe. But the Buddha did not teach us to live by begging the future to be kind. He taught us to understand the causes that shape suffering and peace. He invited us to ask a different question, a question that returns power to our own hands and responsibility to our own heart. What am I planting right now? This is a very different way of living. When we ask, "What will happen to me?" we place ourselves in the position of someone waiting for fate to reveal itself, waiting for luck to arrive, waiting for the right day, the right hour, the right sign, the right prediction. The mind becomes like a person standing outside a locked door, trembling, hoping someone else will open it. But when we ask, "What am I planting?" we become awake. We begin to look closely at our intentions, our words, our choices, our habits, our relationships. We stop treating life as something that merely happens to us, and we begin to see that we are participating in its unfolding every moment. This does not mean that we control everything. The Buddha never taught such a simple idea. Many conditions in life are beyond our command. The body ages, people change, economies rise and fall, weather shifts. Illness comes, separation comes. Unexpected events arrive without asking permission. But within this great river of conditions, there is still something profoundly important that can be trained. There is intention. There is the way we respond. There is the action we choose before the next word leaves our mouth. There is the thought we feed or do not feed. There is the habit we strengthen or begin to abandon. This is where the Dhamma becomes intimate. It does not stay in temples, scriptures, or formal meditation halls. It enters the kitchen, the workplace, the family conversation, the tired evening, the moment when anger rises, the moment when jealousy appears, the moment when temptation whispers, the moment when we are about to speak carelessly because we feel wounded. In those moments, the future is being touched, not by magic, not by superstition, but by cause. And may ask, which day is good for starting my business? But the Dhamma gently asks, is the work honest? Are the intentions clean? Are you creating value without harming others? Are you willing to be patient, disciplined, ethical, and generous even when profit is not immediate? If the work is rooted in deception, greed, exploitation, or arrogance, then even a so-called lucky day cannot protect it from the suffering hidden inside its causes. And if the work is rooted in sincerity, effort, fairness, service, and perseverance, then even an ordinary day becomes worthy. A young couple may ask, are we destined to be together? But the Dhamma asks, is there kindness here? Is there patience? Is there respect when disagreement arises? Is there truthfulness, loyalty, humility, and the willingness to listen? A relationship is not sustained by a prediction. It is sustained by the causes planted every day: gentle speech, forgiveness, responsibility, honesty, and the courage to see one's own faults. If two people harm each other repeatedly and call it destiny, they are not honoring love, they are avoiding wisdom. But if two people learn, soften, repair, and grow together, then they are creating the conditions for a meaningful bond, whether or not anyone ever predicted it. A parent may ask, will my child have a fortunate future? But the deeper question is, what atmosphere am I creating in this home? Do I teach through fear or through understanding? Do I show my child generosity, restraint, truthfulness, and compassion? Do I give them only ambition? Or do I also give them conscience? A child's future is not shaped by blessing rituals alone. It is shaped by what they see each day in the adults around them. The tone of the home becomes part of their inner world. The way conflict is handled becomes part of their emotional inheritance. The values repeated in ordinary moments become their quiet education. Someone who is sick may ask, is this my bad luck? But the Dharma does not ask us to blame ourselves in a harsh or simplistic way. It asks us to meet the condition with wisdom. How can I care for this body with compassion? How can I reduce fear? How can I use this fragile life to deepen patience, gratitude, and understanding? Even illness can become a place where seeds are planted, not because pain is good in itself, but because the mind can learn to suffer less around what is painful. The body may be limited, but the heart may still cultivate gentleness. This is the great turning, from prediction to cultivation. The future is not controlled by anxiety about the future. Worrying does not build a bridge. Fear does not purify karma. Sleeplessness does not become wisdom simply because it is intense. We may lie awake imagining 10,000 possibilities, but do not create peace. Peace begins when we return to what can be known and practiced now. What is my intention in this moment? What am I repeating? What am I becoming through repetition? A single angry word may seem small, but if repeated every day, it becomes a climate, A small act of generosity may seem insignificant, but if repeated often, it becomes a way of being. One mindful breath may seem too simple, but if it becomes a refuge, it can interrupt years of unconscious reaction. One honest apology may not erase all harm, but it can open a door that pride had kept closed. One decision not to lie, not to exploit, not to take revenge, not to answer cruelty with cruelty, may become the beginning of a different life. The Buddha's teaching on karma is not fatalism. It is not a prison. It is a teaching of responsibility, and therefore a teaching of hope. If everything were fixed by the stars, then effort would be meaningless. If destiny were already written in a way we could not touch, then morality would be decorative. Practice would be unnecessary. But the Buddha taught effort because transformation is possible. He taught mindfulness because the mind can be known. He taught restraint because impulses need not become actions. He taught compassion because the heart can be trained beyond selfishness. This is why the question, "What am I planting?" is so powerful. It does not deny uncertainty, but it refuses helplessness. It does not promise that life will always obey our wishes, but it gives us a path through whatever comes, it says. Even here in this moment I can choose a cause. Even here before I know the outcome, I can plant something wholesome. Even here when I am afraid, I can avoid making fear my master. And so the practice becomes very practical. Before sending a message, we may pause and ask, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Or am I simply trying to wound because I feel wounded? Before making money, we may ask, is this livelihood clean? Does it depend on someone else's suffering? Before speaking about another person, we may ask, am I spreading clarity or am I feeding division? Before making a promise, we may ask, can I honor this or am I using beautiful words to escape discomfort? Before reacting in anger, we may ask, what seed will this plant in me and in them? These questions are not dramatic. They do not require incense, ceremony, or special clothing. They require honesty. And honesty is often more difficult than ritual. It is easier to ask whether tomorrow is lucky than to admit that today we were careless. It is easier to blame bad energy than to recognize our own harsh speech. It is easier to fear an unlucky direction than to face the direction of our own craving. But the path of the Buddha is not built on escape. It is built on seeing clearly. And seeing clearly begins with the present. The present moment is not small. It is the only place where intention can be purified. We cannot practice yesterday. We can learn from it, regret what was unskillful, make amends where possible, and resolve not to repeat it. But the actual training happens now. We cannot practice tomorrow. We can prepare for it, plan wisely, and plant causes that may support it. But tomorrow is still only an idea. The hand that can give is here. The mouth that can speak truth is here. The anger that can be restrained is here. The breath that can be known is here. The heart that can soften is here. If we truly understood this, we would stop treating the present as something to rush through on the way to a predicted future. We would begin to treasure it as the field of liberation. Every evening, before sleep, there is a quiet doorway available to us. Not a doorway of superstition, but of reflection. We can sit for a few moments, even at the edge of the bed, and gently review the day, not with self-hatred, not with pride, but with the sincere wish to understand. Did I reduce harm today even a little? Did I speak truth, or did I hide behind exaggeration, flattery, or silence when honesty was needed? Did I give something today? Time, patience, attention, forgiveness, encouragement, material help, or simply a warm presence? Did I restrain anger at least once, even if it burned inside me? Did I learn from a mistake instead of defending it? Did I move a little closer to freedom, or did I strengthen the chains of craving, resentment, and delusion? These questions are simple, but if asked every night, they can change a life. They bring the wandering mind back to the law of causes. They help us see patterns. Perhaps we notice that every time we are tired, we speak sharply. Then wisdom says, care for your energy. Perhaps we notice that envy appears when we compare ourselves online. Then wisdom says, guard the senses. Perhaps we notice that we promise too much because we fear disappointing others. Then wisdom says, practice truthful boundaries. Perhaps we notice that we hold resentment because apologizing feels like losing. Then wisdom says, let humility protect your heart. This is how the path becomes real, not as an idea we admire, but as a mirror we return to. And slowly the question, what will happen to me, loses its grip, not because we no longer care about the future, but because we understand it differently. We still plan, we still work, we still protect our families, care for our health, save money, study, build, repair and prepare. The Dharma does not ask us to become passive, it asks us to become awake. Planning guided by wisdom is not the same as anxiety guided by fear. Preparation rooted in responsibility is not the same as obsession rooted in craving. One makes the mind steady, the other makes it restless. When we live through prediction, we may become dependent on reassurance. We need someone to keep telling us that things will be okay. We may feel strong only when the signs are favorable and weak when they are not. But when we live through cause and effect, confidence grows from within. We know that no one can guarantee every outcome, but we also know we are not powerless. We can plant honesty, we can plant compassion, we can plant discipline, we can plant mindfulness, we can plant forgiveness, we can plant courage. And whatever comes, these seeds are never wasted. Even when the outer result is not what we hoped, wholesome causes protect the heart. A person who has acted with integrity may still face loss, but they do not carry the added suffering of shame. A person who has spoken truth may still be misunderstood, but they do not have to fear the collapse of lies. A person who has loved with kindness may still experience separation, but their love has refined them rather than poisoned them. A person who has practiced awareness may still feel pain, but they are less likely to become completely lost inside it. This is a quieter kind of blessing. It is not the blessing of being spared from every difficulty. It is the blessing of becoming someone who can meet difficulty without abandoning the path. The more we contemplate this, the more we see how compassionate the Buddha's teaching truly is. He did not leave us at the mercy of hidden forces. He did not say, find the right fortune teller and your suffering will end. He did not say, arrange your furniture perfectly and greed, hatred, and delusion will disappear. He did not say, choose the right hour and your unwholesome actions will bear sweet fruit. He pointed instead to something direct, testable, and liberating. Look at the mind, understand intention, abandon what harms, cultivate what heals, see clearly, act wisely. Repeat this with patience. This path may not satisfy the part of us that wants quick certainty. It may not give the thrill of a prediction or the comfort of being told that destiny is already arranged in our favor, but it gives something deeper. It gives us the dignity of participation. It allows us to stand in our own life not as a victim of omens, but as a caretaker of causes. And this dignity is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It appears in the person who chooses honesty when lying would be easier. It appears in the person who refuses to repay cruelty with cruelty. It appears in the person who works patiently without demanding immediate reward. It appears in the person who, after a painful mistake, does not collapse into despair but returns to the path and plants again. That is the turning point of spiritual maturity. When we stop asking life only to tell us what will happen and begin asking ourselves what we are creating, not tomorrow, not someday now. In this thought, in this word, in this gesture, in this silence, in this decision, in this relationship, in this habit, in this breath. And as this question becomes part of us, the world may remain uncertain, but the heart becomes less confused. We may still not know what will happen next month, next year, or in the far distance of our life, but we know what can be practiced today. We know that a truthful word is better than a lucky lie. We know that a compassionate act is better than an auspicious hour filled with selfishness. We know that restraint in anger is better than a favorable prediction followed by harm. We know that wisdom planted in an ordinary moment can bear fruit far beyond what the anxious mind can imagine. This shift does not make life magically easy, but it gives us something far greater than superstition: dignity. Dignity arises when a person can stand before life and say my vonatiski and calmness. My words matter, my intentions matter, and because they matter, I am not powerless. This is the dignity of owning one's karma. But we must understand this carefully. To own one's karma is not to condemn oneself. It is not to look back at every mistake and say, I am terrible, I deserve suffering, there is no hope for me. That is not the Buddha's way. The Dharma is not a whip we use to punish the heart. It is a lamp we use to see clearly. When the Buddha taught that beings are owners of their karma, heirs to their karma, born of their karma, related to their karma, and supported by their karma, he was not teaching despair. He was teaching responsibility, and within responsibility, he was revealing freedom. Because if our choices help shape our life, then a new choice can begin a new direction. If our speech has caused pain, then truthful and gentle speech can become medicine. If our conduct has brought distrust, then honesty can begin to rebuild trust. If our mind has been filled with resentment, then patience and compassion can be cultivated. If our past has been confused, our present does not have to continue blindly. This is why the teaching on karma is not meant to make us feel trapped by what has been done. It is meant to wake us up to what can be done now. Many people are afraid of responsibility because they confuse it with blame. They imagine that to accept responsibility means to stand alone under a heavy sky, carrying shame for everything that has happened. But the Buddha's teaching is much more subtle, much more humane, it says. Many causes and conditions shape a life. We are born into families we did not choose. We inherit cultures, fears, habits, and wounds. We meet circumstances that can be gentle or harsh, fair or unfair. Past karma may condition the field in which we stand. But still, in this very field, in this very moment, the heart can learn how to respond. That response is where dignity begins. A person who believes that everything is decided by the stars may wait helplessly. A person who believes that a room arrangement controls their destiny may become anxious over corners, doors, colors, and directions. A person who believes that only a certain date can bless their life may postpone goodness until the calendar permits it. But one who understands karma begins to see life differently. They may still live among traditions, calendars, ceremonies, and customs, but their deepest trust is placed in wholesome action. They know that a kind word spoken on an ordinary morning is more powerful than a selfish plan made on a supposedly lucky day. They know that a sincere apology can change the atmosphere of a family more than the position of furniture. They know that a mind trained in patience brings safety wherever it goes. They know that generosity creates a kind of beauty no decoration can provide. They know that wisdom is the true protection. This does not mean such a person becomes arrogant, saying, I control everything. No, that too would be delusion. The teaching of karma is not the teaching of total control. It is the teaching of moral participation. We do not control all conditions. We cannot command illness not to come. We cannot command aging to stop. We cannot command others to always understand us. We cannot erase all uncertainty from life, but we can train how we meet uncertainty. We can train the tongue before it wounds. We can train the hand before it takes what is not given. We can train the mind before it hardens into hatred. We can train the heart before it becomes a home for greed, fear, and delusion. This training is not small. It is the very path of liberation. Imagine someone who has lived for many years by lying. At first, perhaps the lies were small, just a way to avoid embarrassment, to protect an image, to escape difficulty. But over time, lying becomes a habit. The person begins to lose purpose. Relationships become fragile. The mind must remember one story here, another story there. Trust begins to decay. And then one day, something in that person grows tired. Not tired in the body only, but tired in the soul. Tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of living in fear of being discovered. If that person believes in fixed fate, they may say, "This is just who I am. My destiny is bad. My character cannot change." If they believe in predictions, they may search for someone to tell them when their luck will improve. If they believe in external signs, they may change their name, change their room, change the date of an important meeting, but never change the habit that is causing the suffering. But if that person understands karma, even a little, a door opens. They may begin with one truthful sentence. Not a grand transformation, not a dramatic speech, just one moment of refusing to lie. They may admit, "I was wrong." They may apologize to someone they hurt. They may accept the discomfort of being seen honestly. They may stop making excuses. They may practice speaking less when the mind wants to manipulate. They may keep a promise, even a small one. They may slowly become a person whose words can be trusted. This is karma changing. This is the future being planted differently, not by magic, not by ceremony alone, not by waiting for the heavens to rearrange, but by creating different causes. Or imagine someone who has harmed others through anger. Perhaps they grew up in a home where harsh words were normal. Perhaps no one taught them how to pause, how to listen, how to feel pain without throwing it at someone else. So anger became their weapon, their shield, their way of surviving. But later, they see the cost. A child becomes afraid of them. A partner becomes distant. Friends stop speaking openly. The home feels tense, and in a quiet moment, shame arises. Here again, the teaching must be held with compassion. To own one's karma does not mean saying, "I am a monster." It means saying, "This anger has causes. It has been fed. It has hurt others. And now, with mindfulness, it can be understood and weakened." Such a person can learn to stop before speaking. They can feel heat in the chest, tightness in the jaw, the rising urge to attack. And instead of obeying it, they can breathe. They can walk away for a moment. They can return and say, "I am angry, but I do not want to harm you." They can seek forgiveness. They can practice restraint, can reflect on the pain anger has caused. They can cultivate loving kindness, not as a pretty idea, but as a discipline that slowly softens the heart. Every time anger is seen and not followed, a new karma is created. Every time restraint replaces cruelty, the path becomes stronger. Every time humility replaces pride, the heart becomes more free. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so deeply empowering. It does not flatter us by saying we are already perfect. It does not frighten us by saying we are hopeless. It simply brings us back to the ground of practice. What are we doing now? What are we intending now? What are we nourishing now? A person may have made many mistakes, but the path does not close because of mistakes. If the path closed for those who had erred, who could walk it, the Dharma is for human beings, and human beings stumble, we forget, we react, we cling, we hurt and are hurt. But the beauty of the path is that it meets us where we are, not where we pretend to be. If someone has been selfish, they can begin to give. If someone has been careless, they can begin to guard their actions. If someone has been intoxicated by pleasure, they can practice moderation. If someone has neglected their parents, their children, their friends, or their own mind, they can begin again with attention. If someone has spoken harshly for years, they can begin today to speak with gentleness. The past may echo, yes. Trust may take time to return. Consequences may still unfold. But even then, a new direction has begun. The Buddha did not teach that wholesome action erases all past results like wiping ink from a page. Life is not always so simple. Some seeds already planted may still bear fruit. Some wounds may still need time to heal. Some consequences may still need to be faced. But present wisdom changes how we receive the fruit, and it changes what we plant next. A painful result can become a teacher instead of a prison. Remorse can become moral clarity instead of self-hatred. Difficulty can become a place where patience, truthfulness, and compassion grow. This is the balance the wise person learns, responsibility, compassion without denial. If we deny responsibility, we remain childish. We blame the date, the house, the stars, the ancestors, the spirits, the neighbor, the economy, the past, the future, everyone and everything, except the intentions we keep repeating. But if we turn responsibility into cruelty, we crush the heart and lose the energy to practice. The middle way is different. It says, yes, I have inherited conditions. Yes, I have made choices. Yes, some things are painful. And yes, I can cultivate a wiser response now. This is moral maturity. There is a quiet strength in a person who no longer needs to blame fate for everything. They may not speak loudly. They may not look impressive. But when something goes wrong, they pause. They ask, what is skillful here? When they are praised, they do not become intoxicated. When they are criticized, they do not collapse immediately. When fear arises, they do not run to predictions as their first refuge. They return to the breath. They return to the precepts. They return to generosity. They return to mindfulness. They return to the simple but profound question, what cause am I creating now? Such a person is not helpless before an unlucky year. They are not defeated by an unfavorable hour. They are not trapped by someone's prediction. Even if another person says, your future is dark, they know that darkness is not overcome by fear. It is overcome by lighting a lamp. And the lamp is wholesome karma. To live this way is to become intimate with the lawfulness of life. Just as a seed of mango does not produce chili, hatred does not produce peace. Greed does not produce contentment. Deceit does not produce trust. Carelessness does not produce safety. If we want peace, we must plant causes of peace. If we want trust, we must plant causes of trust. If we want wisdom, we must plant causes of wisdom. This is not punishment. This is nature. And because it is nature, it is dependable. We may not know every detail of the future, but we can know the direction of a wholesome life. We may not know whether success will come in the form we desire, but we can know that honesty makes the mind lighter. We may not know how others will respond, but we can know that compassion protects us from becoming cruel. We may not know how long we will live, but we can know that each day lived with mindfulness is not wasted. This confidence is not loud confidence. It is not the confidence of someone who believes they can force life to obey them. It is the confidence of someone who has found a trustworthy path. A path walked through speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and understanding. A path that can be practiced in a palace or a rented room, on a festival day or an ordinary Tuesday, in good weather or bad weather, when praised or blamed, when the world feels open or uncertain. And this path is walked one step at a time. Sometimes people want spiritual life to be dramatic. They want a sign, a prophecy, a sudden blessing that changes everything. But the deepest transformation often comes quietly. A person decides not to gossip. A person gives food without expecting praise. A person listens to an elder with patience. A person refuses a dishonest prophet. A person admits a fault. A person sits in silence and watches the restless mind without obeying every impulse. These moments may not look impressive from the outside, but they are the building blocks of a different destiny. The good day is being made there, not somewhere far away, not in the secret language of the stars, not in the calculation of a perfect hour. It is made when the heart turns toward goodness. It is made when a person chooses restraint instead of harm, truth instead of deception, generosity instead of grasping, wisdom instead of confusion. Owning one's karma brings us back to our humanity. It tells us that we are neither puppets of fate nor isolated masters of the universe. We are living beings moving through causes and conditions, capable of ignorance, capable of awakening, capable of harm, capable of great kindness. What we repeat, With what we cultivate, we strengthen. What we cultivate loses its power. So, the question is no longer, what did someone predict for me? The question becomes, what am I practicing? The question is no longer, is this day lucky? The question becomes, is my heart honest today? The question is no longer, can I escape every difficulty? The question becomes, can I meet difficulty without creating more suffering? In this way, the teaching on karma restores the dignity of the practitioner. It invites us to stop kneeling before fear and begin bowing to wisdom. It invites us to stop searching anxiously for guarantees and begin creating causes that are worthy of trust. It invites us to stop imagining that the future is written entirely outside of us, and to recognize that, in this very breath, the pen of intention is already moving. And when we understand this, even remorse can become sacred, not because regret is pleasant, but because it can awaken conscience. A person who feels genuine remorse and turns toward the good is already different from the person who harmed without seeing. To see clearly is the beginning of purification. To make amends where possible is courage. To live differently afterward is the true offering. This is the dignity of owning one's karma. To stand in the truth without collapsing. To accept consequences without hatred. To begin again without illusion. And to walk forward with humility. Still, there is one delicate question. How should a Buddhist relate to family traditions and cultural customs without becoming arrogant or dismissive? This question is delicate because the Dharma does not exist in an empty space. It is lived in homes, at family tables, during weddings, funerals, housewarmings, New Year gatherings, memorial days, and quiet conversations with parents and grandparents who carry the weight of another time. Many people do not turn to auspicious dates, rituals, feng shui, or fortune-telling because they are foolish. Often, they do so because they love their family, because they are afraid of misfortune, because they want protection for their children, because they remember their ancestors, or because they have inherited customs that give them a sense of belonging. So when a person begins to understand the Buddha's teaching on karma, intention, and personal responsibility, the first response should not be pride. It should not be contempt. It should not be the thought, I know the truth and everyone else is ignorant. If that attitude arises, then even the rejection of superstition has become another form of attachment. The heart may have let go of fortune-telling, but it has grasped at being superior, and that is not freedom. The Buddha's path is a path of clarity, but also of gentleness. It teaches us to see clearly without becoming harsh, to stand firmly without becoming rigid, to speak truthfully without wounding unnecessarily. A person can understand that liberation does not come from the arrangement of furniture, the movement of stars, or the selection of a certain hour, and still speak kindly to an elder who believes in such things. A person can know that the roots of happiness are generosity, virtue, and wisdom, and still participate in a family custom if it is harmless and if it preserves harmony. This is where discernment becomes important. There is a difference between respectful participation and inner dependence. Respectful participation means we understand the human feeling behind a custom. We may join our family in choosing a date for a wedding because it brings peace to the elders. We may allow a traditional blessing at a housewarming because it gives comfort to relatives. We may stand quietly during a ritual of remembrance because we honor the love that people still carry for those who have passed away. If the custom does not require harm, deception, intoxication, cruelty, or the breaking of precepts, then we can sometimes meet people where they are. But inner dependence is different. Inner dependence means the mind begins to believe, if the date is wrong, everything will fail. If the direction is wrong, my life will collapse. If the fortune teller says danger is coming, I have no freedom. If the ritual is not performed, I am not safe. This kind of dependence weakens the mind. It turns attention away from intention, away from ethical conduct, away from the present moment where karma is being made. It gives power to signs and predictions, while forgetting the power of a wholesome heart. A Buddhist can live among customs without being imprisoned by them. This is a very practical kind of wisdom. If the family says, "Let us choose a good day for the ceremony," one does not always need to argue. One can smile and say, "If this day brings everyone peace, then let us use it. But let us also make it truly good by speaking kindly, by giving, by keeping our hearts clean." In this way, the Dharma enters the situation without attacking anyone. The chosen day may be culturally auspicious, but from the Buddhist perspective, it becomes meaningful because of the wholesome actions performed on it. When a person is pressured to visit a fortune teller, the response can also be gentle. Instead of saying, "That is nonsense," which may only create anger and distance, one may say, "I understand that you are worried about me. Thank you for caring, but I try to live by the Buddha's teaching. I believe that my future is shaped by my actions, my speech, and my thoughts. So I would rather focus on doing what is right." Such words do not insult. They do not need to win an argument. They simply reveal where one has placed trust. Sometimes silence is also wisdom. Not every conversation must become a debate about doctrine. If someone is deeply attached to a belief and is not ready to listen, forcing the issue may only strengthen their resistance. The Buddha did not teach us to speak every truth at every moment. He taught right speech, speech that is true, beneficial, timely, and spoken with a mind of goodwill. Even truth, when thrown like a stone, can injure, but truth offered like medicine may heal. In family life, this matters greatly. Many conflicts around customs are not really about doctrine. They are about love, fear, respect, identity, and the pain of feeling dismissed. An elderly mother may insist on an auspicious date, not because she has studied astrology deeply, but because she wants her child's marriage to be safe. A father may care about the direction of a new house, not because he is attached to metaphysics, but because he has spent his life believing that a home must be protected. Grandparents may ask for rituals because those rituals connect them to their own parents, to the dead, to a world that is slowly disappearing. If we answer only with cold logic, we may be correct but unkind. If we answer with anger, we may defend the Dhamma in words while betraying it in spirit. To walk the middle way here is to see both sides, to understand the emotional truth of culture, while not surrendering the liberating truth of the Buddha's teaching. The Dhamma does not ask us to hate culture. It asks us not to be deluded by it. Culture can carry beauty, gratitude, memory, and discipline. It can teach people to bow, to offer, to remember, to gather, to care for elders, to honor the dead, and to live with a sense of continuity. But culture can also carry fear, blind belief, social pressure, and harmful practices. Wisdom does not reject everything. Wisdom examines. Wisdom asks, does this lead to greed, hatred, and delusion, or does it support generosity, kindness, and understanding? Does this custom harm anyone? Does it cause fear? Does it demand dishonesty? Does it make people dependent? Or does it inspire wholesome conduct? If a practice is harmless and brings people together, we may participate without clinging. If a practice encourages killing, exploitation, fear, or blind obedience, then we should step back with courage. Not all traditions deserve the same response. Some can be embraced as expressions of gratitude. Some can be transformed. Some must be abandoned. The important thing is that the mind remains guided by the Dhamma, not by the desire to please everyone, and not by the desire to oppose everyone. For example, if a family wants to choose a wedding day according to tradition, one may accept the date and then put the true emphasis on the qualities that sustain a marriage: honesty, patience, faithfulness, generosity, restraint, and loving speech. If relatives want to arrange the house in a certain way, and it causes no harm, one may allow it. while remembering that the real atmosphere of a home is created by the minds of those who live there. A house where people speak harshly, lie, drink heedlessly, and hurt one another will not become peaceful merely because the door faces a favorable direction. And a modest home filled with compassion, virtue, and mindfulness already has the fragrance of blessing. If someone says, "This year is unlucky for you," the practitioner can listen without fear. Perhaps the words were spoken with concern. Perhaps they were meant to warn. But the Buddhist does not need to surrender the heart to anxiety. One can reflect whether this year is easy or difficult. I will guard my actions. I will be careful with speech. I will cultivate generosity. I will avoid harming others. I will train the mind. This is a far stronger protection than panic. Fear makes the mind scattered. Dharma makes the mind steady. And when a so-called bad day arrives, the practitioner does not think, "Nothing good can be done today." Instead, one asks, "Can I keep the precepts today? Can I forgive someone today? Can I give something today? Can I sit quietly and observe my breath today? Can I refrain from angry speech today?" If the answer is yes, then the day has already been transformed, not by magic but by intention. This is the quiet revolution of the Buddha's teaching. It moves the center of power from the sky back to the heart. It moves attention from prediction to practice. It does not deny that life contains uncertainty. It does not promise that good people will never face difficulty. But it teaches that in every condition, the quality of the mind matters. Even when circumstances cannot be controlled, intention can be trained. Even when outcomes are unknown, one can choose not to plant seeds of suffering. Yet in understanding this, we must beware of another danger: spiritual arrogance. Sometimes, after leaving behind fortune-telling and superstition, a person becomes proud of being rational, proud of being pure, proud of being closer to the real teaching. Then the mind begins to look down on others. It mocks the frightened, judges the elderly, dismisses the simple faith of ordinary people, and mistakes sharpness for wisdom. But the true sign of Dhamma is not the ability to defeat others in argument. It is the reduction of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is patience, it is humility, it is the capacity to remain kind, even when others do not understand. It is the willingness to examine one's own mind before correcting the world. If rejecting superstition makes us more irritated, more conceited, more contemptuous, then we have not yet understood the Buddha deeply. We may have changed our beliefs, but we have not softened the heart. The one who truly understands karma becomes more careful, not more proud. They know how easy it is for the mind to cling, if not to rituals, then to opinions, if not to omens, then to identity, if not to fortune-tellers, then to the thought, "I am wiser than others." Attachment can wear many robes. Delusion can speak in religious language. This is why mindfulness is needed again and again. In difficult family situations, the practitioner may ask, "What is my intention right now? Am I speaking to help or to win? Am I refusing this custom out of wisdom or out of ego? Am I agreeing to this custom out of compassion or out of fear? Is my silence peaceful or is it resentment?" These questions bring the teaching back into the heart. They prevent the Dhamma from becoming merely an idea used against others. There is great beauty in being able to say, "I respect your wish, but I do not depend on this." This sentence contains both kindness and freedom. It allows relationship without surrendering wisdom. It allows tradition without bondage. It allows love without fear. And perhaps, over time, family members may notice something deeper than our words. They may see that we are less anxious than before. They may see that when others panic over dates and predictions, we remain steady. They may see that we do not insult their beliefs, but we also do not tremble before them. They may see that on any day, whether called lucky or unlucky, we try to be honest, generous, and kind. This kind of example teaches quietly. It does not force. It does not humiliate. It shines. The Dharma is often transmitted not through victory in debate, but through the fragrance of conduct. A calm person in the middle of fear speaks loudly without raising their voice. A compassionate person in the middle of disagreement protects the teaching more effectively than one who argues with anger. When our life becomes evidence of the path, others may become curious. And even if they do not, we have still practiced rightly. So the balanced approach is this: honor what is worthy of honor, release what leads to bondage, and keep the heart rooted in the law of karma. Join harmless customs when they express love, gratitude, and family harmony. Decline practices that require fear, harm, deception, or blind dependence. Speak gently when possible. Stay silent when speech would only inflame. Explain simply when there is openness. And above all, make each day good by living well within it. For the Buddhist, a good day is not merely found on a calendar. It is created through wholesome intention. A blessed home is not merely arranged by direction. It is built through right speech, mutual care, and restraint. A safe future is not guaranteed by prediction. It is cultivated by the seeds we plant now. With this balance, we can walk among traditions without becoming lost in them. We can respect our parents without abandoning wisdom. We can cherish our culture without mistaking it for liberation. We can let the Dhamma be firm in the heart and soft in the voice. And from here, we can now return to the heart of the teaching and gather the whole journey into one clear message. And so, after walking through this question from many angles, we return to one simple and powerful truth. The Buddha did not place the freedom of the human heart in the hands of fortune tellers, stars, directions, calendars, or lucky hours. In the early Buddhist teachings preserved in the Pali Canon, the path is not built upon dependence on signs and predictions. It is built upon understanding. It is built upon responsibility. It is built upon the deep and honest recognition that what we think, what we say, and what we do become the seeds of our future. This may sound simple, but it is also deeply liberating. Because if happiness and suffering were decided only by hidden forces outside ourselves, then we would be helpless. We would have to wait for the right day, the right hour, the right arrangement of space, the right prediction from someone else. We would move through life with anxiety, afraid that one wrong step, one wrong date, one wrong direction could destroy our peace. But the Buddha pointed to something different. He showed that the most important field of life is not the sky above us, but the mind within us. The most important direction is not east or west, but the direction in which our heart is moving. The most important time is not a lucky hour marked by someone else, but this very moment, when we can choose to abandon harm and cultivate goodness. In the Buddha's teaching, karma is not fate. It is not a fixed sentence written somewhere beyond our reach. Karma means intentional action. It means the choices we make through body, speech, and mind. Every act of generosity has a result. Every word of kindness has a result. Every moment of restraint, when we could have hurt someone but chose not to, has a result. In the same way, greed has a result. Hatred has a result. Delusion has a result. The Buddha invited us to look carefully, not with fear but with wisdom. If we want a peaceful life, we must plant peaceful causes. If we want trust, we must live truthfully. If we want a mind that is not tormented, we must stop feeding the fires that torment it. This is why the Buddha did not encourage his disciples to earn a living through fortune-telling, astrology, dream interpretation, omens, or predictions of destiny. Such practices may attract attention. They may impress people. They may give temporary comfort. But they do not uproot greed, hatred, and delusion. They do not lead to the ending of suffering. They do not teach a person how to purify the mind. And for one who has gone forth into the homeless life, to use spiritual appearance for worldly gain is a serious danger. It turns the path away from liberation and toward dependency, performance, and desire. Yet the Buddha was not harsh toward people who were afraid. He understood the human heart. He knew that when people face illness, uncertainty, loss, marriage, business, travel, birth, death, or difficult decisions, they often seek signs. They want reassurance. They want someone to say, "This will be safe. This will succeed. This will bring happiness." We should not look down on that longing. It comes from vulnerability. It comes from fear. It comes from the very human wish to protect ourselves and those we love. But the Buddha, with compassion, offered a deeper protection. He taught that the true refuge is not prediction, but wisdom, not superstition, but ethical living, not blind hope, but the steady cultivation of wholesome causes. A person may choose the most auspicious day for a wedding, but if husband and wife speak to each other with cruelty, distrust, and selfishness, how long can that auspiciousness last? A person may arrange a house according to every rule of direction and energy, but if the people inside that house are full of anger, jealousy, and resentment, can the house truly be blessed? A person may start a business at a lucky hour, but if the business is built on deception, exploitation, and greed, can it bring real peace? A person may avoid an unlucky date, but if the mind is careless, arrogant, and unkind, suffering will still follow. And the opposite is also true. A person may begin on an ordinary morning, with no special sign in the sky, no blessing from a calendar, no prediction of success. But if that person rises with gratitude, speaks with honesty, works with diligence, treats others fairly, and remembers the Dharma, that ordinary morning becomes meaningful. It becomes bright. It becomes a field of merit. A simple day becomes a noble day, because the mind has chosen the path of goodness. This is the beauty of the Buddha's teaching. It brings power back to the present moment. It tells us that we do not have to wait for the universe to approve of our kindness. We do not have to ask the stars for permission to forgive. We do not have to consult a calendar before we stop harming others. We do not have to delay generosity until a lucky hour. The door of wholesome action is open now. The door of mindfulness is open now. The door of wisdom is open now. The most auspicious morning is the one in which we choose not to harm. When the eyes open and the mind remembers, "Today, let me live gently. Let me not injure by body, speech, or thought." That morning is already blessed. It may be raining, it may be cloudy, it may be a day that others call ordinary, but in the heart of one who chooses harmlessness, something sacred has begun. The most fortunate hour is the one in which anger is released. Perhaps someone has spoken unfairly. Perhaps the mind is burning with old resentment. Perhaps pride wants to answer harshly and make another person suffer. But then mindfulness appears. Wisdom whispers, "This fire will burn me first." And in that moment the hand loosens. The jaw softens. The heart steps back from revenge. That hour is fortunate, not because of a star, not because of a prediction, but because a human being has stepped away from suffering. The most blessed home is the one where compassion is practiced. It does not need to be large. It does not need to face a certain direction. It does not need to be decorated with signs of prosperity. If within that home, people speak truthfully, care for the elderly, protect the children, share food with kindness, apologize when wrong, forgive when possible, and remember that life is fragile, then that home has a blessing no arrangement can replace. It is blessed by conduct. It is protected by virtue. It is warmed by compassion. The most powerful protection is a mind trained in the Dharma, a mind that knows how to pause before reacting, a mind that can see craving as craving, anger as anger, fear as fear, a mind that does not immediately believe every thought that arises, a mind that has learned to return to the breath, return to the body, return to the present, return to what is skillful. Such a mind carries its own refuge wherever it goes. This does not mean life will always be easy. The Buddha never promised that good people would never meet difficulty. He never taught that wholesome action is a magical shield against all pain. Aging still comes, illness still comes, separation still comes, death still comes. The world remains uncertain. But when we understand karma, we stop adding unnecessary suffering to what is already difficult. We stop blaming shadows. We stop trembling before rumors. We stop surrendering our wisdom to fear. We begin to meet life with steadiness. When hardship comes, the one who understands the Dharma asks, what can be learned here? What unwholesome state can be abandoned? What wholesome quality can be strengthened? When success comes, they ask, how can this be used wisely? How can I avoid pride? How can I share? When uncertainty comes, they ask, what is the right action now? This is very different from asking what day will guarantee my happiness. The practitioner knows that no day can guarantee happiness if the mind is careless, and no difficult day is wasted if the mind uses it for awakening. This is why generosity matters. Giving weakens the tight fist of greed. It reminds us that life is not only about taking, possessing, and protecting ourselves. Even a small act of giving, when done with a sincere heart, brightens the mind. A meal shared, a kind word offered, a helping hand extended, a patient listening ear given to someone in pain. These are not small things, they are causes. They shape the heart. They prepare the way for peace. This is why virtue matters. The precepts are not chains, they are protection. To refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and intoxicants that cloud the mind is to create safety for oneself and others. A person who keeps virtue does not need to tremble so much before the future, because they know they are not deliberately planting seeds of remorse. Their sleep becomes lighter, their relationships become cleaner, their mind becomes more suitable for meditation. Virtue is a quiet blessing that follows us like a shadow. This is why mindfulness matters. Without mindfulness, we are pushed around by habit. We react before we understand. We speak before we see the wound our words will make. We chase pleasure without seeing its cost. We avoid discomfort without seeing the wisdom hidden inside it. But with mindfulness, life slows down enough for freedom to enter. Between feeling and reaction, there is space. In that space, the path appears. This is why concentration matters. A scattered mind cannot see deeply. It jumps from fear to desire, from memory to fantasy, from hope to regret. But a collected mind becomes clear, like still water. It can observe. It can recognize impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. It can see that thoughts arise and pass. Emotions arise and pass, conditions arise and pass. And when this is seen again and again, clinging begins to soften. This is why wisdom matters. Wisdom is the light that shows us what truly leads to suffering and what truly leads away from suffering. It sees that greed promises happiness but brings bondage. It sees that hatred pretends to protect us but burns the heart. It sees that delusion makes us chase shadows and fear illusions. Wisdom does not make us cold, it makes us free. It allows compassion to be strong without being blind. It allows love to be deep without becoming possession. It allows life to be lived fully without being worshipped as permanent. So when we ask whether the Buddha taught fortune-telling, feng shui, astrology, or lucky and unlucky times, the answer is clear. He did not make these the foundation of liberation. He did not teach people to hand over their responsibility to predictions. He did not say that happiness and suffering are decided by a date on a calendar. He taught the lawfulness of cause and effect. He taught karma. He taught the ending of suffering through the noble path. He taught that what we cultivate in the heart becomes the world we carry with us. To live this teaching is not to become arrogant toward tradition. It is not to mock those who still seek comfort in old customs. It is to stand gently in wisdom. We can respect culture without becoming enslaved by it. We can love our families without inheriting all their fears. We can participate in ceremonies with kindness, while knowing that the true ceremony is the purification of the heart. We can enter a new home with chanting, flowers, and gratitude. But we should remember that the home will be truly protected by patience, honesty, and compassion. We can begin a new journey on a chosen date if it brings harmony to our family. But we should remember that the journey will be blessed by right intention and right conduct. The Buddha's path is practical. It asks us to look at our life directly. Are we harming or healing? Are we feeding greed or practicing contentment? Are we strengthening anger or learning forgiveness? Are we living in confusion or cultivating understanding? These questions are more important than whether the day is called lucky or unlucky, because the answer to these questions shapes the quality of our life. Each morning, we can begin again. Before reaching for predictions, we can return to the breath. Before worrying about the future, we can look honestly at the present. Before asking whether today is favorable, we can ask, can I make my mind favorable to the Dharma? Can I speak one less harsh word? Can I give one more act of kindness? Can I notice one moment of greed and let it go? Can I meet one difficulty without hatred? If we can do this, even a difficult day becomes a day of training. Even a painful day becomes a day of awakening. And this is the great confidence offered by the Buddha's teaching. We are not powerless. We may not control every event, but we can train the mind that meets events. We may not choose every condition, but we can choose whether to add hatred, greed, and delusion to those conditions. We may not know what tomorrow brings, but we can plant wholesome seeds today, and seed by seed, moment by moment, choice by choice, the path is formed beneath our feet. No star can replace compassion. No calendar can replace virtue. No prediction can replace mindfulness. No arrangement of space can replace heart free from ill will. The true auspicious sign is a mind turning toward the good. The true lucky hour is the moment we awaken from carelessness. The true blessed direction is the direction of the noble path. So let the final message be simple enough to remember and deep enough to live by. No day is good by itself, and no day is hopeless by itself. A day becomes good when the mind is guided by virtue, wisdom, and compassion. A day becomes meaningful when we choose not to harm. A day becomes bright when we give, forgive, understand, and begin again. The path of the Buddha does not begin in the stars. It begins in this breath. It begins in this intention. It begins in the way we speak to the person beside us, the way we respond to anger, the way we care for those who suffer, the way we meet uncertainty without losing our wisdom. This very moment is the doorway. This very action is the seed. This very mind is the field. It is not a good day that makes a good person. It is a person living wholesomely who turns every day into a good day. If you find this useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment.